Welcome back, everyone, to Lesser Known Operators. Today's guest is Chris Lee, a former Green Beret from 10th Special Forces Group, who is now a high performance coach, helping you forge your identity and goals to create lasting progress. Make sure you check out Chris's book, Beyond the Battlefield, a guide to conquering life's challenges on Amazon. Easy click there. I will have links to all of his socials in the show description. I really do appreciate you guys. Make sure you are commenting, liking, sharing, and subscribing to all of the episodes and content that we have. And as I said before, if you think you qualify for lesser known operators, send me a message. We'll have a short conversation, and we just might record an episode. Thank you guys for listening and enjoy the show. Chris Lee, welcome to Lesser Known Operators. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite, man. I love this.
Well, I got to say, thank you for responding, because I saw your presence on social media and I sent out the message. And when I first started doing this, I expected no one to even get my messages and respond to this unknown profile with 6 followers saying, "Hey, you want to be on my show? I know you never heard of me, but I promise I also have a beret."
No, dude, I absolutely love having these kinds of conversations. And then once you and I met the first time and started talking through like how you set up your podcast, I was like, "Yep, sign me up for that." Because just good conversation, I'm all over it. I'm not a huge fan of like things being scripted down to the finest detail. It's like, dude, let's just have a great conversation, man. So I'm like, "Yep, let's do it."
Yeah, one of the guys that came on, he's like, "Man, it's just like we were just 2 Green Berets sitting down having a beer, telling stories and shit like that."
Exactly.
I talked to a guy last night, and we just had a long conversation. Had never spoken before, and we're just talking about seer stories, which you don't get to tell with people. You don't get to talk about those
Right.
stories. Yeah, did you know
Exactly.
this person? How about this person? Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yep.
Um, and I've brought this up on the show several times. If anybody's listening still doesn't know what seer is, you're going to have to Google it, because we don't. It's a very professional class, and I can't believe they're allowed to conduct it on us.
Yeah. It was the most interesting school I never want to do again.
Oh, yeah, no, fuck it. What did some team sergeant, he would say, "Oof, did it, probably never do it again." He would always say that about everything. He
Yep.
said it about Ranger School. Man, that was shitty. Probably never do it again, though.
Exactly.
So you've got this big presence on social media, right? How did that build up? Did you just one day decide to be a coach, or did you just fall into it because people were listening to you?
Great question. When I hit my 10-year mark in the military, I knew I was going to get out. And we can get into that a little bit later. But my buddy, one of my closest friends, he and I have known each other for 20 plus years, and he's a coach, like an executive coach. And he says, "Chris, you should consider doing this." I'm like, "Bro, I don't know what I would say to anybody." But he continued to kind of push me towards that, or aggressively encourage me to move towards that direction. And so I considered it, went through some training, got my first client, just fell in love with the process. And then I realized, oh, I haven't been on social media for 10 years. I have to figure that out now. And if you scroll if you scroll back far enough into my TikToks, you'll see it's me just working out in the gym, and then I'll slap like some kind of motivational phrase over top with some music, and that was my social media plan. And it just
I
so
feel
happened.
attacked right now. I feel attacked.
Right. But I lucked out. This young kid from Atlanta reached out to me. He's like, "Hey man, I'm a video editor. I really like your message. Do you want to work together?" I was like, "Okay." I just secured a client, and so I had a couple extra bucks in the bank. I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And he just took it off, man. Like he's got his finger on the pulse in regards to social media and like trending, all that silly stuff that I have no idea. And he just like launched it, and he started editing my videos really well. He started encouraging me to structure it a particular way, like with a hook and all that stuff. But the message net hasn't really changed. It's just the delivery has changed, and I attribute that all to Daniel, my video editor. he's gone off to do like bigger and better things now, and I'm super proud of him. But the social media was kind of an accident. I didn't anticipate like things picking up the way they did. They just kind of did. But as a result, business started to grow, and I'm super grateful for it.
That's the way all communication's done now, right? Is over social media.
I mean, really, yeah,
And then in the coaching world, it's got to be a lot of word of mouth too, right?
right. Yeah,
People just saying, "Hey, this guy's got a great message and he's really helped me out. You should talk to him too."
the referral aspect is pretty huge because that is like that's gold. That's like golden marketing. If somebody tells somebody else, "Hey, go check this product out, this service out," because people trust each other within their own circles, right? And and yeah, and so like the referral aspect of it has been phenomenal, and I'm super grateful for all the folks that have either referred my social media or have actually worked with me and said, "Hey, you should check this dude out."
That's the best feeling. I don't know if anybody out there can agree with me, but when somebody you haven't seen in a while, or like a teammate, or because your reputation in group is everything. It's once it's gone,
Yeah,
you're and nothing against this person. You're in the armor. You're in the armory. Getting
right.
uh, and there's kind of a couple layers to that joke there, but once that's gone, it's over,
Yeah.
and it feels so good when somebody you run into, an old teammate or an old client, I would suppose, that says, "This guy, this is the one you need to listen to,"
Yeah.
and he led me the correct direction, and he can do the same for you. Why do you think it's so important for not only men but women as well to have a professional coach now?
Great question. And this is kind of the analogy that I use. Like Michael Phelps, one of the most decorated Olympians ever, he had a coach, right? Yeah, he was in the pool doing the work and then also competing, but he had to have somebody to be accountable to. He had to have somebody to say, "Hey, this particular stroke is off, adjust this or whatever." Having that kind of outsider's perspective is just a strength, and like for me, I was into jujitsu for a little bit. You can't really learn jujitsu by watching YouTube videos. You can kind of figure out moves, but ultimately you're going to need some kind of instruction in that setting for proper body placement and how to move your hips and where to grab on the gi and stuff like that. So like having instruction, somebody that's kind of been there before is just it's handy, and again, I see it as a strength. So in like the professional world, how does a coach help? I think really it's like what I focus on is primarily tell me who you want to be. Now let's attach goals to that. Now let's backwards plan, and now I'll keep you stuck to the plan. And it's kind of that simple. And sometimes there's this desire or maybe self-imposed expectation that you have to do it by yourself, and I just think that's dumb. Like when like you and I both know, like when we're practicing CQB, if you walk into a room, you never go in by yourself. It's you always have support with you, and then when you run into an issue in the room, you ask for support so your guys can surround you and help you through that. So why in the world would we consider starting a business or trying to get promoted within your career? Why would you think you have to do that by yourself? I just think it's silly. So I, I've gotten a lot of benefit from being coached. I think I try to provide value for the folks that I work with, and then from my own perspective, I get super invested in other people's lives, and now some of my clients have become incredibly good friends that I'm excited to like hang out with and chat about life and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess it would become like this uplifting coexistence, right?
Right.
As you guys progress together. And if you think
Exactly.
about it, all aspects, if you want to be better in the gym and you don't like the direction things are going and you don't have somebody telling you what to do, well, adding a coach is just going to be that much better because you have this perspective of
Right.
your point of view, where a
Mhm.
coach, can look at things from that proverbial 30,000-foot view, see the
Yeah.
direction you're going, your
Yep.
possible things that you're doing to hinder your performance and things like that, and then give advice because they've
Yep.
seen it over and over again. And,
Exactly.
you know, they say, those that can't do, teach. I don't think that's always the case,
Right.
but at least if somebody that's been there before
Right.
can probably teach it really well. Who's the majority reaching out to you, men or women?
A good question. Um, a majority of the DMs in my Instagram are like young, either high school or college age dudes asking about selection. Hey man, how do I get through selection? What are some tips and tricks? How should I train? And I'll give them an answer as best I can, often based on my own experience. Like, this is how I trained. Try that. But in regards to folks that actually pull the trigger and like want to work with me, it's it's like a 60-40 split in regards to men and women. And the folks that I have found to be most successful through the coaching process, like most of them haven't even ever served in the military. They but they do like that kind of perspective of, military has a reputation for getting things done and getting things done on time. And me offering kind of that perspective, and a lot of the stories I tell are from my military experience, I think they appreciate and then get some value from. But again, back to your question, most of the folks I work with are maybe a little bit older, maybe late 30s, early 40s, in their career already, and looking to level up. Like, what can I implement in my life right now to get me to the next level? I've gotten to here by myself. I want to go a little further. Chris, what do you think? And then we jam on it and figure out how to either become more efficient, more dialed in on goals, and not letting those fall on the back burner. And some of it is just like, hey, stop messing up. And like, I can just say that, like, you are messing up in this area. Stop doing that. Oh, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. And it's been wild.
Yeah, I guess people like they don't know, they don't think it, but they need that regiment or the discipline
Right.
in their routine, their daily routine to be put on that because most people don't have it. And if you're getting people mid 30s to 40 reaching out to you, that's like that midlife, like, what am I doing
Yeah.
phase? What am I
Exactly.
doing here? And I don't
Yep.
want, because then you start really getting experience. Because up until, in your 30s and getting towards 40, you don't know what the fuck's going on.
Right.
You're just figuring it out. And
Yeah.
then you've got some experience going, well, I don't want that shit again. But some people are comfortable with that, and comfort kills, right? And they'll
Yeah.
just stay there because they're not in a bad situation. They're just in a okay. They're just get in that click and stay there.
Exactly.
So yeah, the people that want more, but and I guess with the rise, like we said, of social media, they're seeing it more. And it depends on what you listen to. Like if you're listening to health and fitness podcasts or business podcasts and things like that, or self improvement,
Right.
that the algorithm is going to pick up on that and it's going to feed you stuff and you'll see things that like you want to improve because everything you see is manipulating you, right?
Right. Right.
And then if you're following bad shit, it'll drive you the other direction. It'll bring you down. How
Exactly.
important is that whole focus? It's not just your actions; it's also what you surround yourself with.
I talk about that constantly. I'm sure I've got a community on the school app of all of my clients. We get together a couple times a week for group calls, and I'm sure they are tired of hearing it. But I talk about it constantly. Is the seeds that you allow to be planted in your subconscious play such a huge role in everything: decision making processes, your habits, your perspective on life. And so guard that field of subconscious with your life, and ensure that you are very intentional with what you allow to be planted there, because that plays such a huge role in everything. So don't fill that up with junk. Be intentional. Surround yourself with the right kind of people, with the right kind of, I don't know, social media stuff. Like, social media is a part of life now. Ensure that you are watching and soaking up the stuff that's only going to make you better. Stop listening to stuff that's tearing you down or is depressing or whatever, because it's tearing you down and making you depressed. So
it's important that you say that often, right? Because I've
Yeah.
found myself last night, I'm like, I need to make another funny reel. I got three
Right.
days. Every 3 days, a funny reel comes out, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, let's hit the reels for some inspiration. And then all of a sudden, I go, how long have I been doing this?
Right. Yep.
And then it sucks you in, and you forget. So if you don't have somebody constantly telling you, hey, you need to be aware of what you're soaking in,
Mhm.
then you're going to forget. You're going to get sucked into that doom scroll, and it's going to manipulate you to what it wants you to do,
Right.
and you'll feed on that, and you don't realize it either.
Yep.
So, do you have a different approach when it comes to men and women? Do you speak differently, or do you try to toe the same line?
Good question. I it actually depends on the individual. I've found that I've had to retighten my filter after leaving the army, like because I could be pretty direct with a guy like yourself, and you're not going to get butthurt of me just telling you like it is. That approach doesn't always work with everybody, particularly if you've never served. And so I had to relearn how to tighten that filter up. But once I figured that out, now I can determine based on the individual, not necessarily men versus women, but rather on an individual basis. Particularly if we've known each other for a little bit, I can I can like stop pulling my punches and just give it to them like it is, and they appreciate it too because now they can implement faster. Uh, others I definitely have to kind of hold hands and kind of navigate around the issue until we circle back around and hit that point. Say, all right, do you know what to do now? Yeah, okay. It just takes a little bit longer, but
Yeah, as long as you're doing things for the right reasons, right? You can kind of apply that sales tactic of, okay, now I got them. Now
right,
it's easier to give them an elevator ride, and that's for the cost. That's for your sales thing. But when
right,
it comes to personalities and dealing with them, okay, I got you now, and I'm going to handle you this way. But then once you get to know me a little bit more, I'm going to really tell you what I think about you.
right,
Is that
exactly.
kind of the what you got to go after?
You nailed it absolutely, and certain people really appreciate that too. They kind of some of them signed up specifically not for me to be nice, but rather, dude, just give it to me like it is. Shoot me straight. I've got a quote that I say all the time. Real friends stab you in the face. And sometimes I try to be that for people. And what I mean by that is like if you're messing up, if you're not living up to the standard that you've set for yourself, it's kind of my responsibility now as your friend to let you know that you are not living up to the standard you've set for yourself. Now the tricky part comes into the individual on the receiving end of that has to have created an environment, one where I am okay and comfortable saying pretty blunt things, but you also have to receive it in such a way like Chris said that because he loves me, not because he's being a jerk, you know? And and once we're in that kind of like back and forth dynamic, dude, it's game changer. And nothing is the limit, you know, like you can just cruise after that.
It's good faith, right?
Yeah.
Once you're in that space where it's good faith, I like that. Real friends stab you in the face, and that's the veteran community in whole, right?
Absolutely.
Uh, you know, uh, talk shit about you right to your face, and then say the good shit behind your back.
Exactly.
Uh,
100%.
unless they're
Yeah.
a shitbag, and then it's just shit to their face and shit behind their back,
I've
but
met
not
those
really
too.
trying
So.
to hide them. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's a different world. Like you come very regimented, and then in group we're professional, but we're like this alternate reality of professional, right?
Right.
We're great at what we have to do.
Right.
So you come out, and that's a different attitude. How were you able to reel yourself back in from going from that to now I got to deal with people and they're a little softer?
I think I think some of it was just repetitions, like understanding, hey Chris, not everybody is served in the military. Not everybody is used to getting the knife hand and then scuffed up and then everything is fine 20 minutes later. Not everybody operates that way. And so the more repetitions I got, the more I understood, hey Chris, you can deliver this in a maybe more tactful way that will be received. Because ultimately, that's the most important part. doesn't matter what I say, it has to be received and then implemented on, and if I've said something and it wasn't received properly, that's on me. I need to adjust fire to ensure that the instruction that I think is right is received well, so it can be implemented immediately. So to answer your question, I think it was just about repetitions, and I've gotten enough repetitions in now that I can feel out the situation. Like one of my clients, I knew very early on it was going to be like almost like being in a team room. He's never served, but he has that mentality, and so I could just give it to him straight, and he appreciates it because then he can go crush like immediately. And then other folks, it just takes a little bit more social engineering to get my point across. If that makes sense.
Do you run into some people and then you just, after it clicks and you just go, man, you should go to selection or you should go into the service?
Yeah,
Do you meet people like that?
absolutely. There's been a number of dudes that I've had great conversations with, and they either haven't served, but it's always been like an itch in the back of their brain, and I say, dude, you would absolutely crush it in the military. And then other folks are like they're already serving and they're kind of hemming and hawing about maybe going to selection, and I say, just go do it. Train as hard as you can, get prepared, and then go do it. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting in your rocking chair at 90 years old, always wondering. And that by far is worse than failing at something. You know,
It's
uh,
going to be torture.
it would be the worst. And it's okay to fail. I think that's a big message that I try to get across to people. It's failing is part of the process. So do it fast and do it early. And and don't be afraid of it, because every time you fail, you have learned something. And and if you're too afraid to fail and you're too afraid of the perception others may have of you as a result to then go try something pretty astounding, then you're going to be mediocre the rest of your life because you're so concerned about the thoughts of others that it's going to keep you imprisoned in average and mediocrity.
Yeah. The other side, there's a lot of sides to this show, right? But one of them is, when you meet people like that and you're like, yes, you would do great at this. But also, if you watch some of these episodes, you and of shows, not just mine, other people's shows, you see that be cognizant that there is a price to pay
Right.
for, like, I may have my shit together on the screen here, but you didn't know me like a year and a half ago.
Right.
And a lot
Right.
of these guys, you didn't know them back then. They're in a completely different place than they were. There's a price to pay for all of this stuff. That beret takes a lot. It costs a lot of your life and a lot
Yeah.
of your mental health to get and to keep.
Yeah.
Do you try to impress that on people when they do ask you about the process?
Yeah. And de- depending on who like DMs me, I can tell through that quick conversation in messaging that I can tell pretty quick who loves the idea of the job versus somebody who actually wants to go do the job. And uh, and I try to I voice that pretty quickly, like, hey, go research more. I don't think you actually understand what this job entails. Or somebody, is just spot on. I'm like, yes, you're going to go crush it, go do amazing things, because I wholeheartedly believe that you're going to get through selection, get through the queue, and you're going to be a great teammate. But yeah, I do try to impress that this is very difficult. I mean, a lot of the questions I get are like, I've got a girlfriend, but I want to go to selection. What do I do? Like, if I can be honest, don't go to selection with a girlfriend. And not because it's impossible, but rather like you need to be singularly focused. Or they say, hey, I've got a wife and kids. I want to go to selection, but she doesn't really want me to. Dude, have a conversation, because if she's not 100% on board, it's going to be a long, hard road. More so than just the queue, but like home life is now a point of contention because you're gone all the time. You're doing crazy things, a lot of which you can't talk about. It's tough, and so when people ask me about that, I'm like, unless she is 100% on board, it might not be worth it. You know, everything has to be in alignment if you're going to go do this and do it well, and that includes the people that are closest to you. You know,
Can you imagine, like, we're out in front of the hut there. Um, all right, boys, you've been selected. We're formed up. And the master sergeant just stands up there and goes, "Gentlemen, I want to tell you something. You made it this far. Incredible accomplishment. Well done. You can choose to go to the Q course or not go to the Q course. But for all of you guys that are married, I want you to go home and ask your wife one thing. Is she willing to sacrifice you for the next 10 to 15 years
right,
over her? And
right,
if she's not, you're not only not going to make it, you're going to ruin your relationship."
yep,
That's just, can you imagine they stood up there and everybody would go, "What the fuck is this guy talking about?"
it's accurate though. Yeah,
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 that it's true. It's true. You are going to be asked to sacrifice your personal life over and over and over and over again, and you will not say no ever, not one time.
right, exactly, and that you pay a heavy price as the soldier going through that, but everyone around you pays that price too. I mean, you miss birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, and you kind of try to justify it in your head. It's like, well, we'll make up for it when I get back, or we'll make up for it when things have settled down and it's a lighter training schedule or whatever. The problem with that is all those special moments aren't special anymore if you can just do them anytime. Like somebody's first birthday is a big moment, and if you missed it, you missed it. You know, and I do, yeah, I do want to hammer that home. It's like it is not easy, and then particularly for the people that are back home waiting for you, it's not easy for dad to be gone all the time. You know, and so if you're gonna pull that trigger and go do it, make sure everybody's on board. And it's even tougher with kids because their vote, they might not really understand what you're going to ask of them. Uh, they like when I was to be honest, I didn't even tell my kids what I did for work. I just told them I was a medic, but I was gone a lot, obviously, and to include a lot of training missions and when I was in Europe, and then deployments and stuff like that. It wasn't until I got out that I was like, "Hey, this is what I used to do for work. This was my title, etc." And even then, they don't really get it. They just remember, yeah, Dad was gone a lot, you know, and that's time you can never get back. And so, if you are going to pursue this, make sure that you have weighed that out thoroughly with everyone involved. You know,
Yeah, it's tough to weigh out the future, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen.
exactly.
But then you
Yeah.
say, "I'm going to make up for it." You're betting the future
Right.
and disregarding past experiences. Like, "Oh, I know it happened this way one time, but
Right.
I'm going to get it next time." So, but there's a heavy price to pay for all of it. The regiment will take everything from you if you let it.
Yeah.
I think guys are becoming more cognizant of that. I talked to a younger guy the other day, and he had his head screwed on straight. Like I'm going about things this way and
Yeah.
or philosophical, but you can get beat down. Shit, you know, you can get blown up or get a concussion, and then it changes your whole personality, and then you're not dealing with things correctly, and then
Right.
you're driving mission. The whole thing can weigh down. It's a rough thing, but it's fucking worth it. I think
Totally
so.
worth it.
I don't know.
Totally worth it.
I just look back now. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm glad I did that shit. I'd still
Yeah.
wish I was doing it. I would put that uniform back on tomorrow and go walk back into group and be the S1 clerk just to go back. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't care. Fucking back. Sure. I know I can't jump out of planes. I can't do any of that other shit.
Yeah.
But loved it. I loved it. Some people, not for them. Most of those people had an experience similar to me. They went to a bad team. They're like, what the fuck is this? And then they left.
Right.
And
Right.
that's unfortunate also. How did you, we're quiet professionals, right? I
Hmm.
ask everybody this one. How did you say that's bullshit. Now that I'm a civilian, I need to be making some noise because guys will just carry that out and they'll be,
Yeah.
no, I'm silent. I'm a silent professional. And then everybody
Right.
else needs to be a silent professional. I'm sure you've gotten more pushback because you're more in the light than I am. Like I'm completely unknown, but if anybody wants to harp on me, they can lesser known operators at gmail.com. I'm waiting for your hate mail. But how did you deal with that being
Yeah.
no longer silent? I got to make some noise.
I I tried very hard to measure every every piece of content against this. Am I representing the regiment well? And I think I have been. Um, Now there, incidentally, a lot of the videos that I've been putting out, the ones that get the most traction are the ones that are me doing cool guy stuff, jumping out of airplanes or blowing stuff up or at the range and stuff. And I remember this one time. This has been 2 years since I got out of the military. I posted that video, and in the comments, some dude was like just scuffing me up, just berating me and saying, what happened to quiet professional? If I was your team sergeant, you would never go on another whatever. You'd never get another school. And early on, when I started posting and I would catch hate like that, I would take it personal and I'd immediately try to respond to justify. But this particular instance, it had been a number of years, and I kind of just got used to some of the negativity, and so I just sat on it. I let him cook himself, and then less than 2 hours later, he replied under his own comment, is like, dude, I had no idea you were out. I understand now that you're a coach. I love what you're doing. You're doing great stuff. Sorry about earlier. And so it's like, okay, cool. The answer was don't don't give energy to negativity. It'll sort itself out, or it's none of my business. If somebody doesn't like me because I'm posting on social media, you know, I don't really care. They can choose to not like me. It's not my business. Um, but you're right. There is kind of this mentality that quiet professional is the same as silent professional, and I think they're different because, truthfully, more people need to understand, like this conversation we're having right now, what it takes to get to where we were, and the cost of it. And if nobody talks about that, then nobody goes in with proper education to the process, and nobody really understands the cost. And that's a disservice to future team members, because if they went in blind and thought it was going to be one way, and then now it's way harder and everybody's unhappy, to include wife and kids, dude, we have let them down. We have to be honest about what it's like. Now, having said that, we got to do a lot of really cool stuff too. And that is the payoff of the cost, right? We get to do cool guy stuff, and that's what everybody wants to do. But I also try to balance, like, hey, I was sitting at a computer quite a bit too, doing cybersecurity awareness and all that stuff, and so it's not always at the range. It's not always jumping out of planes and doing stuff like that. But the times that you are doing it, it's awesome. So that was a whole lot of word vomit, but
No, you're fine, man. And you're
cool.
right? So we've had the most information that has been available ever at
Right,
this moment. And then
right,
in an hour from now, there'll be more information. When this podcast gets put up on the internet, there'll be even more, right? But up until 2 weeks in hell came out, nobody knew what selection was because it was all just rumors and shit
exactly.
until that documentary came out. And then after that, everybody said, okay, at least we have a framework to train for.
Right,
And now years later, there's all these ex Green Berets or ex SEALs or whatever crafting these training programs specifically geared towards selections in their
right,
respective branches. But that's the hard shit. That's lines up with the cool guy shit, right? And then you see the end result of the videos and everybody
mhm,
sharing the footage of war for the last 20 years and shit like that.
right,
But the admin side or the personality side or
right,
the mental health side, you only get that from this.
Exactly.
And you got to research and get into that too. And that's where maybe the guys coming in now, maybe they'll get more of that because it's available. But as I said, before 2 Weeks in Hell came out, there was nothing.
Exactly.
I talked to some people and they're like, I got the selection. I didn't know a fucking thing. I was completely surprised. It was the
Right.
hardest goddamn thing I ever did in my whole fucking life.
Exactly.
Uh, and I went, well, at least I had that documentary to give me because I was in the regular army and nobody knew anything about it at all. They're just like,
Right.
oh, there's the badass guys and hands in the pockets. That was the big thing. For some reason, there's like everybody's comment was, the Green Beret. Oh, they've always got their hands in their pockets and shit.
Yeah.
Like, oh fuck, man. I guess. Then when memes started coming out, that was the first one.
Yeah.
Uh, um, it's become more mainstream.
Hmm.
Even units like Delta, right? If Black Hawk Down wouldn't have happened, nobody would know who the fuck Delta was. It
Exactly.
wouldn't have. And then we got the rise of media, and then you get these clips out there. Well, who the hell are these guys? What do they do? Oh, and then we
Right.
got the Rangers. Um, and it's unfortunate. Something bad usually has to happen for information to be released about this shit.
Right.
Um, you know, Lone Survivor, totally
Hmm.
fucked up operation, and then now you get, but it's the foundations and things that have come out of it helped a lot of people down along the way,
Yeah.
and for that helping of people along the way thing, right? I can see in some blurred letters there beyond the battlefield. I assume that's your book. I can't read at the bottom, but it does say Christopher Lee
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. That's my book.
What? Because the whole show, I can show you one of the pages right here. The whole show started with my little note right here of me trying to make a logo. What what was the catalyst? What was the first spot that led you now to put down on paper what it is beyond the battlefield?
um, I won't lie. Like I've always on my bucket list somewhere. I've always wanted to write a book. The problem was, Chris, are your thoughts worth putting down to paper? Um, and I had the good fortune of doing a speaking engagement with Nick Lavery. I'm sure you're familiar with him. And this was a couple years ago now. And I spoke for about 30 minutes. He spoke for about an hour. And then afterwards, he was doing his book signing, which was awesome. I was stoked just to be around him. But he kind of saddled up next to me after everybody dissipated and was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about writing a book?" I was like, "Yeah, actually, I've considered it for sure." And he said, you should probably like really do it." And then about a week later, a publishing company reached out to me on TikTok and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about writing a book?" I said, "Okay, I get the picture. I'm receiving the signs. Let's go do this." And and the process was pretty cool actually. My my thought was, one, I don't want to write like a war biography or tell war stories, but rather I want to offer my coaching philosophy from beginning to end in 150 pages. That was the intent. And working with this particular publisher, their process was awesome. I developed this poor habit in college that I would edit my papers as I typed them, and so it just took like 1,000 years to get anything done. Their process was they would hop on a Zoom call with me and record me talking through chapter by chapter, and then they would take the transcription of that video and that audio, and that's my manuscript. I was like, sweet, I'm like 80% done now, and it only took a couple hours. And so then the editing process, like I could put in more stories, kind of rearrange some things, and then send it off to their editors to make sure that I didn't sound dumb. And then they helped me with the cover and all that. But yeah, it was a cool process. One, because it was something I'd always wanted to do, and if left to my own devices, it probably would have been another decade before anything would have actually gotten done. But a couple people poking and prodding me to like get after it, and I was able to put it out like beginning to end. It was like a 6 month process, and it was published. So I was pretty
Oh
pumped about
wow,
that. Yeah.
these editors, and this is something you don't think about. These people can read 1,000 words a minute,
Right.
and that's all they do is read, and they go, okay, this needs to go over here, this needs to go over here, and they'll rearrange your whole story, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden you've got something that people can digest.
Yeah,
What's the message of Beyond the Battlefield more than the namesake?
sure. The message ultimately is you are in charge of your own destiny, and you are also responsible for it. So if you are unsatisfied with where you are currently, just go look in the mirror, and that's the problem. That's probably the message boiled down into a phrase. Um, Now, taking that, I then lay out steps like, all right, if you want to change, these are the areas I focus on, and these are the steps I would follow in order to elicit change. I kind of focus on five main categories. Each could have like a subcategory to it, but I think they're the heavy hitters, and that's mental, physical, emotional, social, and financial. I think if you have structured your life in a way that's planned out for each of those categories, you're doing pretty good. And that was the intent behind the book. First, get you to own responsibility for your life and not blame anybody else for your current station, and then give you a plan of attack to then go carve out the life that you want.
Where'd you draw those from? Is that just you garnered those along the way of your experience, or
Yeah, a lot of that was personal experience reading I mean, I've got a whole bookshelf here full of other personal development books and some of the common themes there. But my main thing is I think it's actually pretty difficult to compartmentalize one's life. If you're lacking discipline in one area, it will probably bleed over into the other areas. And so my thought is, well, like, let's just attack all the areas and ensure that you're well rounded and moving forward in each of those categories. And so that was kind of my thought process behind it. A lot of it is like envisioning your future. We talked earlier about planting the seeds in the subconscious. That's like step one essentially. Is tell me who you want to be first, and then we'll start talking about goals and how you want to attach those goals to the life that you want.
yeah, and that's important, right? Where do you want to be?
Yeah,
Where are you now? Where do you want to be? What are the steps that you're going to take to get there?
exactly.
And you brought up Nick Lavery, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a few people I've got them on a list that I could reach out to. I have direct contact to, but I'm holding back, right?
Yeah,
Because when I do reach out to them, I want to be so good that
yeah,
they go, this dude is this dude is going to do exactly what he says he does. I want to be the number one show in the world.
right.
Well, how can I do that? I figured the best way is I do long interviews. I do long conversations. I get the most practice instead of short. There's nothing wrong with anybody else's show. It's
Right.
just the way I'm doing mine.
Yep.
And I can develop the way of talking and linking subjects. And it's tough, right? Because whatever, TBIs, you can blame that or things. Maybe I don't have the linking my conversations together. I don't have any
Sure.
practice, but I can get more practice. I can link these things. And when I reach out to these people and they come on, they see I've got a small thing and I tell them what I want to do. I want them in no doubt in their mind, just like when I step up in front of people and speak to them,
Yep.
that physically, when people look at me, that guy was a Green Beret.
Right.
I want when people come on my show, no doubt that this guy can do exactly what he says he was going to do.
Right.
And that's important. Like if you don't say what you want to do, then you don't have anything to strive for. I may never be the number one show in the world, but if I try to do that, I'll probably get pretty fucking high, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
You know,
100%.
um, and that's the goal of everybody at selection, right? They want to be the next. I don't know. Fuck. I mean, what was our generation of people? I guess the horse soldier, next horse soldier, right?
Yeah.
Um, that bad motherfucker that everybody's talking about,
Right.
riding down from north of Afghanistan and toppling governments and shit like that. They want to be that bad motherfucker.
Exactly.
Well, I give my goals and put them out there, but you got to get your shit together first, right? You have to get everything in order
Yeah.
before. And some of that comes with having somebody tell you, hey, you're fucked up. You need to tighten up in these different areas.
Exactly.
Let's talk about you for a first. You know, there's a lot of jobs out there. Why go after the beret?
Great question. I can remember the moment. So uh, I went to school to be a youth pastor. My senior year of college, I ran out of cash, so I came back home to Virginia. volunteered at a church for a number of years, eventually came on staff, and it was like the best job in the world. I threw dodgeballs at middle schoolers and high schoolers as hard as I could, and they loved every minute of it. Um, th-
What?
throughout that, yeah, they just kept coming back for more. But throughout my period serving in the church, I got to a point where like, oh no, I don't believe in God anymore. And that's a bit of a prerequisite if you're going to work on staff in a church. And so I stepped down from that position, still volunteered all the time, but then started working at this fancy hotel in Virginia to cover my bills. And and that job was actually pretty cool too. My official title was activities coordinator, and what that really meant was I was a concierge on steroids. I helped people primarily with their dinner reservations, but then I also teach kids how to play frisbee golf or roast marshmallows for them on the weekends. And it was a great job. Looking back, it was like super cush. They were starting to groom me for more managerial positions. But I remember the night, man. It was the dining room was a little short staffed, so they asked our department, "Hey, can you guys help deliver food to the patrons?" Yeah, no problem. And so I walk out there, I grab a tray of food. It's loaded up with plates. I walk out to the table. I deliver their food. The patrons were phenomenal. It's not like anybody was rude to me. They were just very grateful, smiles. Thank you very much. Awesome. But I remember I took the empty tray and I was walking back to the kitchen and I just got overwhelmingly furious. I was like, Chris, you are not living up to your potential. Go do something different now. And that was the moment. And so I dropped the tray off. I went back to my computer in my department and immediately started researching military. Like this looks difficult. I should probably go pursue difficult. And admittedly, the first recruiter I spoke to was a Marine recruiter, and I was 27 at the time. And we talked a little bit, but ultimately he said, "Chris, why are you trying to get in so late in the game? You're kind of old." And I shot back. I was like, man, I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. I feel like I could do well. But anyway, I was like, all right, I guess the Marines didn't work out. And I considered being a Navy SEAL because everybody does, but can't swim great. So what is left? And so I looked at the Army. I was like, what is it? I literally Googled what is a difficult job in the Army, and Special Forces popped up like almost immediately. I was like, what is this? Tell me more. So I did months of research, and I was like, I think this is the right path. Reached out to a recruiter. We got to talking, and ultimately, yeah, that's the path I chose. I wanted to get an 18 X-ray contract. Unfortunately, I had a knee surgery when I was younger, and so at MEPS, I was not allowed to obtain any kind of airborne contract. And I remember talking to the doctor. I was like, Doc, what do I do now? I trained for a year physically, mentally trying to prepare for this. And he's like, well, you can still join the Army. You just can't get an airborne contract. Okay. So I walked back out to my recruiter, told him what was up. And he says, Chris, uh, you could enlist as an 11 Bravo or infantryman, and then maybe pick up an 18 X-ray contract while you're at basic. I said, all right, let's go do it. And that's exactly what happened. So enlisted as 11 Bravo, got scuffed up for weeks and weeks. At some point, though, some SF recruiters approached myself and a couple other dudes and said, "Hey, do you want to try out?" Yep, absolutely. Where do I sign? And that was why I chose what I chose. It was kind of a roundabout way, but ultimately, boiled down, the reason I chose this particular path was I wanted to pursue something where success was not guaranteed. I hate the idea of participation trophies, and I wanted to pursue something where I could give it my all and still come up short, because I want to know if I have what it takes. And I was fortunate enough, got through selection, got through the queue, and was on the teams and worked with like the best dudes in the world, and I'm so grateful for it.
That, check me if I'm wrong here, that
Yeah,
might be the first instance of a recruiter giving a very vague scenario of something and it actually happening.
yeah,
Because
it,
that's it, that never, for everybody listening at home, recruiters say a lot of shit, right? And if you're a recruiter and you say I'm lying, you're lying. But they'll tell you whatever. Oh, okay, we can't do this, but you can map makers. They drive the army.
Right.
19 key tankers or shit. They'll be saying some wild shit. Be like, really? Oh yeah, yeah, you'll be good. So for that to actually happen, to say, hey, maybe you could pick up an 18 X-ray contract at basic training,
Right.
um, for that to actually happen is probably pretty rare. But
Yeah.
that's I mean, great though. I not afforded anything like that. I went to Fort Sill, field artillery,
Yeah.
and yeah, it wasn't for me. It was like, but I didn't have to. I When I went to selection the first time, I didn't know what an 18 X-ray was. I went over
Right.
and talked to the guys, and they were chill. They were on edge because they had just been getting abused for
Exactly.
6 months by the cadre, and so they were on edge. They hadn't relaxed yet
Right.
because they relaxed. Everybody else got more stressed out as selection went on,
Yeah.
and the 18 X-rays, they just kept getting more and more relaxed because nobody was yelling at them
It was great.
anymore. I
Exactly.
bet that's what everybody says. They're like, "Oh, it was like a time off. As long as you could pass the gates and or land nav and team week was what it was." But
Right.
I went over there and talked to them, and they told me the process. And like I enlisted, or shipped off for basic in April, and basic AIT. You get to my unit, went to the field, came back from the field, went to the briefing, signed the thing, and I was at selection in January. So
Yeah.
April to January, I was at selection.
Yeah.
Whereas 18 X-rays. Maybe they enlisted in January and they went to basic, and then they went to AIT, and then
Right.
they got over Fort Bragg after airborne school, and they've just been getting abused for 12 straight months,
Yeah.
and then selection. And I
Right.
went, oh man, I feel really bad for you guys, but I've been in the state less than you guys, and I did not have that experience. I felt so bad for the guys, and they're telling me stories of all the PT and shit they did. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, no, man, I had CQ a couple times, pretty rough.
Right. Yeah, I think you're onto something. You know, X-rays are often looked down upon because they have zero military experience other than the emotional and psychological abuse that they just withstood. Right. I get it, but man, and granted, I'm biased. I am an 18 X-ray, but a lot of the X-rays I met, worked with, worked alongside, dude, they just wanted to serve at the highest capability that they could, and they were often eager to learn. And yeah, aside from like being a little shell shocked from all the abuse, we were just eager to serve, and we just wanted to be there, and we were just, to be honest, grateful for the selection process, and just like, thank you so much for not yelling at me all the time. It was it was great.
Yeah, I don't know. I think everybody should have to do a little bit of time in the regular army, but whatever. No X-ray is going to agree with me because the regular army fucking blows,
Right.
and that's why I got out of there so fast. And one of my previous guests, he said, we're not asked to do that job. We're asked to be a Green Beret. I said, fair point. Fair point.
Right.
You got me there. I understand, but you should be able to do a little bit of the basics instead.
Right.
At least, do you know how to march? Yeah. Well, yeah, prove it. Yeah, sure. But so you go to selection, time off basically because you're an X-ray. Oh, the other saying that we have on this show is no one likes X-rays except X-rays. And
Okay.
but I posted a reel the other day,
Mhm.
and I was thinking of Tom Kelly, who was um, X-ray in 2000, I think 2004, 2005.
Mhm.
And I was like, hey, are all these stories true of how it was in those years? And he goes, oh, everything you heard is true. And so I made this little reel of just over the top abuse, right, from
Right.
Star Wars, the ninth one, the newest remake.
Yeah.
And I showed it to my wife, and she's like, well, that's not funny. I was like, no, no, wait, someone's gonna find this that thinks it's funny. And
Right.
sure enough, some guy jumps in the comments and goes, yeah, I was a cadre in 2004. That's true. All
Yep.
that's true.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So at least you weren't there in the early years.
Yeah. Kind of lucked out there.
So it's got to be a feeling of relief, right? You accomplish something, now getting selected, and you're chasing the hardest thing you can do, right? That's
Right.
what. And you don't know. It just keeps getting harder and harder as you go through. Because it's more regimented. You got the more information you have to retain, and
Yeah.
especially you're going to be a Delta, which is a much longer process. I think your course is what, 9 months longer than mine, or is it 6 or 9 months longer
It's
than mine?
it's 9 months if you don't recycle sockum, and um, most people recycle at least once. You know.
Yeah, it's like most guys were 3 years
Yeah.
to become 18 deltas, and most everyone else was 18 to 24 months.
Right.
Wild. For everybody listening at home, the 18 Delta course is the Special Forces medic, right?
Yeah.
And the amount of information and practical skills that you learn is teetering on the coattails of being a PA, right?
Yeah.
A lot of guys that are Deltas go on to be PAs after their service. You just learn so much, but it is in a short amount of time.
Right.
But there's trauma rotations to a shitty part of the country.
Yep.
There's, how do I say this? Real life training scenarios that you get yourself into that you can't be duplicated anywhere else. And
Exactly.
that shit sticks with you. Once you do that sort of training, you know how to do it. You're not forgetting that shit ever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe in your dreams, but it's a growth process. So you pass selection, you start the Q course, you're no longer an 18 X-ray. What are you feeling at this point?
I tell you, so at selection, I wanted to be a Charlie. So I wanted to blow stuff up, and I've got a bit of a construction background myself. I was like, yeah, let's go do that. I'm so grateful I went Delta instead. But after selection, they're like, yeah, you got
I feel
selected.
attacked again. I feel attacked again.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But after I got selected, you have that like out processing interview, and they're like, hey, based on some test scores and stuff, you should probably go Delta. Whatever. I'm just grateful to be here. Yeah, send me wherever you need to. So once we get back to Fort Bragg, they divvy people up. All right, you're going over here, but all the 18 deltas or prospective 18 deltas, we're going over to the schoolhouse, and that's where your barracks are. So we throw all our stuff in pickup trucks, drive over there. And I remember, the first day was really like an introduction to what to expect. But that evening, they also brought all the spouses in, like, hey, these next 9 months are going to be brutal for your soldier. Think of it as a deployment. They're just going to be gone studying constantly and often doing crazy hours at the schoolhouse, etc. So that was cool to kind of understand what to expect. But man, I remember it was my first day actually at SOCM, Special Operations Combat Medic course. We got all our learning done. We were done by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then our NCOIC was like, all right, you guys go mow the yard. And in my head, I had this moment of like, oh, maybe you don't realize we all just passed selection. We're good. And I learned very quickly selection doesn't mean anything at that point. Like, you are now just beginning. And it was a great ego check on me. It's like, just because I've accomplished the hardest thing in my life doesn't mean I'm anywhere close to the finish line yet. Just keep going. Mow the yard, weed whack, whatever they have you do in those moments, and then go study on top of it. So how was I feeling? I was so grateful that I got through selection. So grateful that they wanted me to go Delta. And now it's like, all right, every day let's look in the mirror and make sure that I still want to do this. And yeah, I still want to do this. Let's keep going.
Yeah, you're in the Army now, bud.
Right, exactly.
If somebody outranks you, they're going to tell you what to do. Knowing what you know now and looking back, as soon as you said that, I'm like, go mow the lawn, I'm like, it was probably All American Week.
Maybe so.
Or something like that. And you have no idea what's going on at the time because you're a student.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, yeah, go rake the leaves out of the trees, the ones that haven't fallen out yet, or shit like that. That shit would come up in the course, right?
Yeah.
You'd have to get the post ready, even no matter what you were as a student. Oh, you're on a tasking now, bud.
Yep.
And you're gonna go fucking cut the grass. Well, we don't have a lawnmower. Well, you're gonna fucking figure it out.
Figure it out, pal. Yeah, it was awesome.
That was my one of my incentives throughout the course, because coming from the regular Army, I really didn't like Oklahoma. I didn't like Fort Sill. I didn't really enjoy the unit I was in. I didn't like what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I sure as fuck didn't want to go to 82nd. I'm sure there's great people have great experience there. I do not want to go there. So all the
Right.
time, every event, it's like, well, you're not going to quit, and we're not. We're just gonna. Maybe we'll die, maybe we'll pass, but it's going to be one of those two because we're not going over there.
Exactly.
Was that in your guys' mind at all? But you had no concept of the regular army really at that time, or did you have some inkling because people were talking?
They they were, as time progressed, obviously there were grumblings, guys would drop or they would quit or they would get dropped. And sure enough, yeah, they were down the road to the 82nd. I remember during selection though, there was this guys that were coming from other units. Selection was selection. They definitely wanted to be there. They wanted to do it, but they also had a home to go back to if it didn't work out. 18 X-ray is like, we have no home. We are needs of the army. Who knows where they're going to scatter us? And it made. I'm not saying selection was harder or more intense, but rather it's like there was like this fear. If I don't make it, I have no idea where I'm going. I have no home base to go back to. And I do remember kind of thinking through some of that while at selection. Is like, dude, you're homeless. You have to get through this. Do not quit. Keep going. Push harder. And then once we were in the queue, it was more of an understanding like, yeah, you're just going to get shipped off to the 82nd if things don't pan out, and which you hear all kinds of horror stories about infantry units at the 82nd and stuff like that, and the Q course, you just wanted to be in the Q course for longer because you didn't want to go down the road to the 82nd. That was kind of like the mentality and kind of the perspective a lot of the dudes had. It's like, dude, just we got to stay here,
Yeah, yeah. I just want to keep going on the path I'm going on and
Right.
succeed. Are you able to manipulate that into impressing that upon the people that you coach? Like, hey, you've got this goal, and the real, it's not succeed or die, but you
Right.
need to go at things that way. You need to attack what
Yeah.
you're trying to accomplish that way, because do you really want this thing? Do you really want it? Well, if you fail, you're gonna look back and regret it for the rest of your life. How do you take that experience that you had in the Q course, that full commitment, and
Mhm.
instill that in people?
I I do some visualization techniques, and it's like picture your ideal future. Everything in your life is perfect. Everything is exactly the way you want it. Own that. Like, soak up the emotions that you're feeling. Like, feel it, see it, like breathe it for a little bit, have it ingrained in your brain, and keep that there when you're faced with like the hard days, the days that, man, just won't stop. Because like that is what you're chasing after. The alternative is less than that. And if that's what you actually want, if that's perfection for you and that's the life that you want, you have to just keep pushing forward and muscle through all the junk and silliness that the metaphorical Q course is throwing at you. Um, and so for people that have zero context in, for military and kind of what I'm talking about, like that I coach, the visualization may look way different for them. Maybe that's like, being able to retire at an earlier age and surrounded by friends and family, or I don't know, buying the McLaren or whatever it is. Um, that's what we're chasing after. And so anything less than that is is less than what you're actually capable of. Um, Something I try to instill is, and this is a lesson I learned from the Q course. Yeah, it was 3 years for me. So every day for 3 years, I had to wake up and chase after this thing. And it for me, it was a marathon. And the the folks that I talk to and we kind of go through that, it's all right, take your goals. I typically talk about 5 year goals. Your 5 year goals. In 5 years, this is what you want to have achieved and where you want to be. When you break that down over the course of 5 years, the steps that it takes on a daily basis to get there are actually pretty bite sized. They're more manageable. I think a lot of folks, they want to achieve everything they want to achieve like right now, in the next 90 days, or even in the next 12 months. And man, sometimes there's just not enough days in a year to make that happen. But if you can spread it out and hold on to the vision for that long, the steps that it takes to get there are more manageable on a daily basis. You just have to pay for it with time. And as long as you can do that and stay the course, you have this, I call it the compound interest of effort. The accumulation of small tasks on a daily basis spread out over time. It's like the compound interest in your bank account. Like you start investing a little bit at a time, and it looks like nothing is happening until 1 year down the road, it like hits a J hook and all of a sudden it's spiked. And that's how I view effort on a day to day basis. Like you might not see results right away. It might take 90 days before you begin to see the first result. But if you can stay consistent and stay disciplined and stay on that path, you will see great things happen if you just stick with it.
How do you keep yourself on that path?
Right. Because now my path looks way different. Um, the Q course was almost easy because I knew exactly. I just want the green hat. I want the green hat and everything that it stands for. And so that was the vision, and it also helped that I had cadre every day scuffing me up and telling me where to be, how to do it, and whatever. That helped a great deal. Having gotten out of the military and now I'm creating a new vision, a new plan for my life. It looks a little different, but the process is still similar. I still got to show up every day. I still got to put in the effort that is required to move me a little bit forward every day. And and I found that the best way to do that is to surround yourself with the right kind of people and be very selective with who you let into your inner circle and ensure that the people that are in your inner circle are the ones that are going to stab you in the face when you need it. And then welcome that kind of constructive criticism as it arises, because that is what is making you better, and that is what is helping keeping you on track. And if you're going to try to like lone wolf this thing, some people may be able to do it, but I think it's way harder. And so surround yourself with the right kind of people, and that's what I've tried to do is get the right people in my inner circle to ensure that we're all lifting each other up and moving towards that life that we're chasing after.
Being a coach is like giving part of yourself away like all the time. How do
Yeah,
you make sure you're not constantly doing that? Because if
right.
you're just always out and never any in,
Yeah,
it's just going to be you're eventually the teeter totter is going to be sitting on the ground.
I totally agree. And I'm a self-proclaimed introvert. I My batteries recharge when I'm alone. And naturally, if I had, I don't know, some other kind of job and I didn't have to interact with humans, I would be totally fine for weeks on end without communicating with another human being. Um, the nature of my job is quite the opposite. I do have to like give quite a bit of myself throughout the process. So in order to ensure that I'm the best for them, I do try to guard some time, whether that's putting my phone on silent, otherwise it's blowing up all day, or you know taking time to just be outside, or allow myself the ability to sit in a sauna for 2 hours because that's what I need right now to rejuvenate, ensure that like my brain is functioning properly. I feel good. Giving myself permission to do things that are beneficial for me is huge because I think people that serve for a living, they can go down this rabbit hole where they feel guilty if they're not serving 24/7. And if there's a moment where they're not giving to somebody else, they think they're failing. And the analogy I use is when you're in an airplane and you lose cabin pressure, put your oxygen mask on first and then help the people around you. I think it's I think that's what has helped me guard some of that time and reclaim it back for myself is I know the best way for me to serve the people around me is to ensure that I'm firing on all eight cylinders. And that requires me to say no to certain things and carve out time for myself, whether that's working out, sauna, spending time with the kids. Like I need that in order to be healthy so I can offer a better version of myself to others.
Yeah, you got those angry sauna sessions coming out lately.
Yeah.
Saw that. Introvert, you must have really enjoyed land nav then.
It was my favorite part of selection, hands down.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
got to be
Yeah.
because for everybody at home, if you haven't figured it out so far, there's a lot of land navigation that trips people up in the Q course, and you're just given a few digits on a sheet of paper, and you got to go figure it out yourself, and
Right.
you're all alone. And not only are you all alone, you're surrounded by people that you can't talk to.
Right.
So when you do run into somebody in the woods, you can't even look at them. You won't even look at them, and you can tell if they're going to quit because they'll be trying to talk to you, and you just walk right past them.
Yep.
That's the ultimate introvert activity.
Yeah.
There is
It,
land nav at Camp McCall or out in the NTA at
yep.
Bragg.
It was my favorite.
Really, I
Yeah.
once I got started, I was good,
Yeah.
but I'm just standing there looking off into the darkness, going, mm, I don't want to go out there.
Right.
Um, and I've said this a few times on the show. I had just watched the movie The Village, M. Night Shyamalan's The Village.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was, I was, I was scared shitless of
Yeah.
every noise out in the
Right.
woods for no reason. I know there's nothing out there, but there, turns out later when you get to SUT or other phases, there's hillbillies out there,
Yep.
uh, and they've got nods and shit too. They've stolen from the military off the
Yep.
DZ. They're following you around trying to steal shit.
Yep.
Uh, so I guess I wasn't that far off when I
Right.
when I got far on that there was actual monsters out there with crooked teeth trying to get you.
Yeah.
No, that's great, man. We get experiences in our community, right, by fucking up,
Right.
and if you garner that hey, I need to take care of myself, otherwise I'm not going to be able to help anybody else.
Right.
And usually that's by really torpedoing your life. That so many people in our regiment, in our walk of life, do. I know I
Mm-hmm.
did. As a result, I don't drink anymore. I can't drink
Right.
at all. So that's just one thing. But I feel great now, as a product of it. So it
Yeah.
held off for that long. Did you know what you're getting yourself into in the Delta in trying to be a Delta?
No. I walked in with zero medical experience, and I showed up and I was like, holy smokes, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. But the beauty of that, of the Delta course specifically, is like the instructors are phenomenal, and I almost attribute my lack of knowledge as a strength, and maybe that's just me being super optimistic, but I didn't have any poor habits to unlearn. I was at zero, and so everything they taught me, that's just the way I did it because that's the way I was taught. I didn't have to break any other habits. Like one of my friends that was during in Sockham with me, he was a '68 whiskey, and so he was just a stud, and so they offered him this position. He's like, "Yeah, I'll absolutely go to that school," and he did phenomenal. But I could tell that there was some tension between like the way he had been taught prior and then versus the way that he was being taught in the school, right? But like my journey through Sockham was just, it was just bananas. It was. I know this is cliche, but it was drinking from a fire hydrant every single day, and you had to remember it the next day because it all compounds on itself. To include anatomy and physiology, pharmacology, and then clinicals like doing IVs. We did thousands of IVs on each other, uh, to the point where like once I did my hospital rotations, the nurses would often ask, 18 Delta perspectives, like, "Hey, can you come hit this IV for me?" Yeah, no problem. And we'd throw it in and then walk away because like we were just so used to hitting IVs all the time. But then moving into like trauma and like those trauma lanes were the most stressful and often outside, so you're under the elements anyway. So there were times where it was so cold outside, we had to use MRE heaters to heat up the IVs before we administer them because you could give a guy hypothermia if you cool his body temperature down too quick. It was awesome. It was a great school.
What year did you graduate?
I graduated the Q in March of 2016.
Okay, so I graduated October of 14.
Okay.
So, um, so we similar pipeline. So you had to
Yep.
be a gorilla, a G, right?
Yeah.
For Robin Sage.
Yep.
So, I get to the Q course and we're in IUW, and I'm coming from a regular Army. I'm specialist ward. I know a few things or whatever. They're like, okay, you're going to go be a G. I was like, I don't know, fuck. Because I didn't know much about regiment. I was just like,
Yeah.
I'm a high performer and this is the way I'm going to go.
Yep.
So, and nothing was going to stop. So they send it out, and we're, back and forth or whatever. And we finally get to the end of Robin Sage, and cadre comes over and he puts the card on my neck. He says, once the shooting starts, fall over. And he comes over and starts spraying me like this, just nonstop, just squeezing. And I was like, Sergeant? He's like, shut up. And he just keeps squeezing blood. And like, I'm soaked, all red, right, like in my groin area and stomach. So I got shot. I'm reading the card. I was like, oh, I guess I'm fucking dying. And 18 Delta comes over, and it's two patients, and I get the one guy and he gets the other guy. I was like, fuck. They start throwing bandages on and tying me down to a sheet of plywood or some shit, and there's gunfire going on all around. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And I'm strapped to a board now, and they're like, get him in the back of the truck. And so I'm like this, strapped to the truck. I'm like, fuck, that's fucking far to the ground, shit. So they tossed me in the back of the pickup. My buddy's next to me. I'm here. I'm covered in this fake blood. And they yelled at the students, turn the lights off, and they get the tarp over the top, right? Yeah. So we're tarped down in the back of a pickup truck, flying down the road. I mean, hauling ass.
Yeah.
You can feel it. And I'm strapped to a board. I'm like, I'm going to fucking die. I'm going to fucking die right here. And they've got their headlamps off. And I think the cadre was back there, and he's assessing. And he's like, all right, it's pitch black. Fucking pitch black in there. He's like, to both of the Deltas, put an IV in. And I go, is this motherfucker serious right now?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a real person. Are you kidding me? and I don't know if you can see from there.
Yeah.
So I still remember this very clearly. That 18 Delta, he goes like this, and he goes, oh yes. He can, because the vein he's going to hit is the size of my pinky popping out of my arm, because I'm freaking out.
Right.
And he goes, yes. And he did it in the dark. Nothing, didn't feel a fucking thing. And he's dripping. And because he knew in that moment, he's like, I'm going to get my beret next week.
Yep.
That's it. I'm done. The relief. And I didn't realize till later when I learned what the 18 Delta course is like, that he's like, the rest was just procedural. But the cadre was like, you're both going to throw a IV in the dark, in the back of a pickup truck, flying down the road, just like it would be in a Black Hawk in Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have to do this under nods at some point. And he made those two cats do it, and they both graduated. They ran their clinic when we got to the barn, and there was pizza. I was super happy about that.
That's awesome.
But then I'm like holding two. I'm like, fuck this guy. Afraid of needles and shit here. So that's just one thing in the course that happens. And it's like, fuck yeah, those dudes. And then I get in the course. I wasn't even in the course yet.
Right.
Nothing. And then we get into the course. So I was like, I had fucking tons of fun from there, except for SUT, but whatever.
Yeah. Nobody likes SUT.
I just didn't like it. Like I said, Charlie course was all mine. Killed it. There was only 7 minutes during the whole course that I doubted all of my life's decisions up to that point.
Really?
When that time fuse was burning down.
Oh, yeah.
That was it. You're just questioning everything. Everything. You're like, oh, fuck, what if the moon, the gravitational pull just sets off, and you only get 5 seconds plus or minus for that thing to go on. And you're like, oh, fuck, you're just fuck the whole time. And no, hit right on.
Nice.
Unfortunately, of the three of us being tested, the guy next to me, he cut my time also. So he was supposed to cut 7:30, and the next guy was supposed to cut 8, and so mine pops and his pop half a second apart. And he was fucking pissed.
Yeah,
he's like, I don't know how I fucked that up, but obviously being 30 seconds off exactly, I fucked up.
Yeah.
He's like, sorry, bro, I'm just going to carry heavy shit now for the rest of the Charlie course. So,
Later, dude.
you got any fucking stories that stand out to you about the Charlie or about Delta course where you're like, what the fuck? I can't believe this shit.
uh, some of the best stories I can't really talk about due to the nature of the training. But I tell you, every 2 years, Deltas have to go back and do a refresher, and it's typically considered like a gentleman's course. So it's like no yelling, no getting scuffed up or anything. And often the first individual in each section gets tossed like a softball to like brush the dust off for a trauma lane. It's typically like a gunshot wound through the leg, through and through, no major arterial. So you essentially bandage them up and you're good. The instructor that I had for this particular refresher was awesome, and he's like, "Fuck that! We're gonna. You guys are medics. You need to be medics." And I was like the first one to go, and it was a crush injury. So he preps the patient, and I'm not watching. I'm like stuck in a closet somewhere. He preps the patient, and we typically then run outside, and I go do work. But he's like, all right, medic, I need you. Follow me. And so I'm running after him. He runs me all over the compound, just back and forth. So I'm like winded at this point. Then he comes back inside, brings me down into the basement into like a little closet and shuts the door, and it's pitch black in there. He's like, hey man, you got a crush patient in here. And it was in this moment I was like, I forgot my headlamp. Crap. And I had this moment of panic, and I was like, oh no. So I open up my bag and I feel around. I grab a pen light. So a pen light's usually used to check pupil dilation and stuff like that. I just put it in my mouth and went to work. And I was sweating bullets because I was like, I just screwed that up. But did the lane, and he just took forever. It was just like, an hour and a half long trauma lane that I'm working through. This guy's quote unquote underneath a huge pile of building. And so I have to prep him for like potential crush injury and preventing like cardiac arrest due to like all the junk that then floods back into his system after that thing is lifted off him. But I get through the clinic, and I was again internally panicking the whole time because I could barely see. I'm trying to hit IVs using this like dim pen light that's probably about to burn out. But I get it all done, and he indexes, and I'm like, thank God. And again, pouring sweat down, and everybody, because it isn't just the instructor in there and then me working. It's everybody in our little cohort watching me work. And so it just had like an additional layer of stress and pressure. But we walked out, and he's like, all right, you passed. Good job. And everybody was like, dude, how did you stay so calm? And I was like, I was not calm. But I know the sequence. I know the process of how to do this. So I just followed that. And that is like, I talk a lot about in my book, remaining calm in stressful situations. And I attribute a lot of the training I got during SOCM to that ability to remain calm. And being able to rely so heavily on training and the confidence you have in that training, following a very specific sequence to assess and then treat a patient, it allows you to think more clearly because you're not trying to come up with solutions on the fly. It's like, no, I just follow my formula and I'll stick to that. Keep breathing, and then get through it. But I absolutely love that instructor. He made everybody go through something similar, like just like a crazy scenario that wasn't a softball, and I really appreciated it. I thought it was awesome.
You probably reverted right back to student stress
Oh
because
yeah,
you've got your beret and tab. You're in group at this point. You're just going back to Bragg to do your refresher training.
yeah,
So that happens. You forget your headlamp, and instantly you're an 18 X-ray again.
yeah,
Just full panic. I'm
yep,
not going to graduate. I'm going to get dropped. Oh my God. Fuck, 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 fuck. But
exactly.
for everybody listening at home, I would say that's got to be in the top 3 fears in the Q course is losing your headlamp. There are
Yes.
hundreds of people in the 82nd Airborne right now that wanted to be Green Berets and they lost their headlamp or had a complete failure of their lamp
Yep.
or something in Bones Fort Creek, and
Right.
their career ended because they didn't have a second lamp, or they lost both of them, or
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
So that is a top notch. That's a tier one fear of a Green Beret, is to lose your headlamp.
Yeah. Accurate.
There's fucking it scares me sitting here. I'm starting panicking.
Yeah.
Um, because when you're doing land nav, you can't move with lights. It's all blacked out, and you can only check your map and plot your course under a red light.
Yeah.
Red light. Back in the day, you had to. I'm told you had to have put your tarp out, and you
Yep.
couldn't show any light. You
Yep.
couldn't have any signature. So I'm like, well, fuck. We at least we couldn't move with the red lamp on,
Yeah.
and guys would get stuck for that. But yeah, tier one fucking fear right there. Goddamn, fuck that.
Yep.
Um, I noticed when we were at Robin Sage that the Deltas knew that they had already graduated the Q course. Like Sage was just, hey, we're just here. Because once they finished Sockham, they're like, yeah, they're not going to drop us now. There's no way.
Yeah. My my experience was quite different. So
Oh, really?
yeah, so they front load Sockham. When I went through, they front loaded Sockham. So I went from selection straight into Sockham for a year. Then I started the Q course. And so by the time I got to Sage, one, there was plenty of opportunity there to either get reclassed or to get dropped altogether. But when I got to Sage, particularly, I was I was the only Delta on my team for Sage, and the cadre kept just pounding into me, "Hey, this is a very medic heavy lane." They kept referring to it as robust. It's medically robust. I remember that word specifically. This is a medically robust lane. I'm like, crap. So every scenario, it was just me and me having to run everything, every single scenario. And so even up until they indexed Robin Sage, I was like, man, I'm not 100% sure I got through. Uh, and some of that is probably like 18 X-ray residue left over of like, I'm never good enough. Will someone please be proud of me? you know, but at the end, cadre index and announced everybody that got through Sage, and when he saw my sigh of relief after he said, "Yeah, you made it," he's like, "Dude, shut up, you were good." So it was a wild ride, man.
Every Robin Sage lane is completely different,
Yeah,
and it's wild. I got to work with some contractors that's all they do. They've been doing it for years. They live in Pineland.
yeah,
Um, they got Pineland tattoos. They got the plates on the front of their car. They
yeah,
are residents. They got everything. And I started asking them questions about Sage. I was like, well, what goes on the backside? And I told them my experience, and they go, oh, it sounds like you were up this here and you were doing this thing. I said, yeah, that's it. And I said, well, what are some bad experiences? And the guy, he sits forward and he goes, I've been on a couple lanes where the entire team got dropped.
yeah.
I went, well, you got to be fucking kidding me. He's like, no, they got about halfway through and they started committing war crimes and they just, dropped everybody.
That's
You got to be
crazy.
fucking shitting at me. So luckily I never had that experience,
Right.
but apparently that shit happens. And then I talked to another person. They said the same thing. They had been on a lane where everybody got either recycled or relieved.
Mhm.
Like, fucking nuts. I was like, I did not have that experience at all. I never left the camp.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I had heard horror stories like that too. Fortunately, our team just gelled super well together. We all knew our roles and went out and just did work, and it was awesome. And so I think we were fortunate in that regard. And we had great leadership too. Like our one captain in particular was just spot on. He just crushed it and kept us in line, which was awesome. But yeah, I had heard similar horror stories of entire lanes just getting dropped, and I would often think like, dude, that would just be horrible. 3 years of the queue, and then get dropped there, or not even recycled, but like cut. dude, it would just be miserable. Like how do you live with that? That talk about the rocking chair test and the level of regret that would just eat you up, man.
Oh yeah, they sad part of it. Some dudes that went over to the 82nd couldn't deal with it, and they weren't alive very long,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah,
Over I saw one guy over one pull up. He's
really,
lost his life over one pull up. He couldn't do that sixth pull up
no
in
kidding.
something, whatever phase we were in.
Yeah,
And he went to the 82nd, couldn't handle it, and was dead. Very
jeez,
sad. So
yeah.
yeah, that regret of don't leave anything on the table. It's a real thing. So we finally reached the top of the mountain. It's time for graduation. Old Chris Lee is now going to be a Green Beret, and you think you've accomplished something, but you haven't accomplished shit yet.
Nope.
What's that like, going from the high of graduation to the low of walking in the team room?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think the Q prepped me for that pretty well. Understanding that every phase that you get to, you are now at the bottom of the totem pole again. And my first team was actually in First Battalion for 10th Group, so we were in Germany. And I remember walking into the team room for the first time and just standing at parade rest until somebody addressed me. Like they allowed me in. I didn't have the privilege of being able to sit anywhere yet, so I had to stand everywhere. Uh, but but overall, like I just kept my mouth shut and listened as much as possible, and and I think that helped a great deal. I knew very well that yes, I was a medic. I was special forces qualified, but team life is like it's a whole new animal. And I was there to learn as much as I could, and and learn about yes, team SOPs, how they conduct things, but also about personalities, like who is who on the team, and not just like hierarchy, but rather like who's who. And to this day, I've made some of like my best friends in the world from that first team. If I can, I'll tell you a quick story. So uh, I was there for maybe 3 days. This is like day three. Everybody's still calling me new guy. Totally okay with that. Standing at parade rest, this the senior weapons sergeant walks up to me. His name's Paul, and we tell this story all the time. He walks up to me, gets like this close to my face. He's like, "Hey, new guy, you're a medic, right?" Roger, sergeant. All right, grab your med bag and some instruments, and meet me in the back team room. And our team room was broken up into like three rooms essentially. The back room was our bar area. It had couches and tables and stuff like that. And so I went over to my med bag, grabbed some gloves and some instruments, my headlamp, and then I walked back to that room. And this senior weapons sergeant is laying on a table with his shirt off and hands over his head like this, and he's like, "Look in my belly button," and he says, I've got something going on in there that I need you to deal with. It's either an ingrown hair or something, but go get it. And I couldn't tell if he was being serious or not. I thought maybe he was just hazing me. I'm like, yep, Roger that, Sergeant. And so I went in there, and like I had my headlamp on and rubber gloves and tongue depressors trying to spread apart his navel. And at this point he's like starting to chuckle, and so like his whole body is shaking, and I'm like, Sergeant, can you please like pull back your navel, like spread it out for me so I could get deeper. And I'm digging around in there, and I never found it. Like his belly button is so deep. The joke is like, dude, I was like elbow deep in this guy and never found the issue that he was facing. But that is like one of our favorite stories to tell of like how Paul and I met. And now he's like one of my best friends. But it was an interesting moment because it was the first couple of days of me being in a team room, and I just, yes, I'm not going to say no to anything. I'm just going to serve as best I can, and maybe they're fucking with me, and maybe it's an actual issue. Turns out he actually had an issue he had to go to the doctor for, but uh, I couldn't find it with my headlamp and tongue depressor. But team life is just so wild because you make like the best friends in the world. And then in a couple years, you all kind of split up because you go to different teams, you get stationed somewhere different or whatever. And it's just team life is great though. But I was well aware I was at the bottom of the totem pole, and I had to kind of work my way back up.
It's very difficult to impress on a civilian what it's like
Yeah.
because everybody's a Green Beret.
Right.
And whether you're a new guy or a senior guy, everybody went through this baseline of something that's so incredibly hard to do. And the most junior guy on the team has just done that. So but that's like the top of the mountain for some people will never accomplish that shit in their whole life.
Right.
Um, and we, as Green Berets, we have a tough time acknowledging the fact that we do crazy shit over and over and over again. And we discount our experience, our ability to lead, um, our place in the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how do you convey that to people of like working on a team, or because people got to ask you how did you deal with that team life of fitting into it, of being a team player?
Right. Right. The term I often use is performance paranoia. There is this underlying paranoia that begins to take root in one's life of like, dude, I don't want to be the weakest guy on the team, whether physically, mentally, capability wise. Like, I don't want to be the bottom rung here, and it is constantly like trying to be better than the guy next to you, but not in like a competition way, more like a healthy rivalry way. Like I tell him how I did in the gym today, and he's like, "Oh, I beat you by 5 pounds yesterday," or whatever the case is. And it's this constant like trying to be better than each other, but in reality, trying to better oneself. And it was, in my opinion, like the best environment ever. And it's so hard to replace because not everybody thinks that way. And I'm by no means shitting on civilian sector, but it is hard to find those kinds of people in the civilian sector. I would argue that an environment like that is almost unique to military and those kinds of places of service, like SEALs, Rangers, GBs. It's like constantly wanted to just be the best all the time. And then everyone around you is also wanting that too. And it just forces everybody to be better. And it's just an awesome environment to be in. And yes, it can be stressful because somebody's got to be at the bottom rung. But that's okay because it pushes you to want to be better. I think that's what the difference is. It's not just being better or being the best on the team. It's this constant desire to want to be better. And that I love and I miss it. And I knew when I decided to get out of the army that I was going to be walking away from that kind of environment, that kind of community. And moving forward, I would have to be very selective with the kind of community I allow near me because not everybody is built that way. Not everybody has that kind of mentality. And and Dan Pena has a quote that I use all the time: "Show me your friends and I'll show you your future." It's spot on. And if you are not surrounding yourself and creating an environment in which wanting to be the best all the time, if you're not creating that, then you aren't going to be the best. You're going to eventually devolve into average and mediocre. And for some people, that's totally okay, and they're content with it. I'm like, awesome. It's not okay for everybody, and if it's not okay for you, like you have to be intentional with the kind of environment and the kind of community that you establish for yourself.
Do you think we have a responsibility to the general public to, we were the best then, we should be the best now? Not that anyone should have to look up to us. We
Mm-hmm.
should just continue that high level of performance. Do you think we have a responsibility to do that for society as a whole?
That's an interesting way to put it. The guys that I used to run with, it's less about a responsibility and more like I don't know how to turn it off. And so I get out of the army and I walk into the civilian sector and I'm the only one that's 15 minutes early, right? Like that's kind of like the common theme. And that's a little thing, but when accumulated over years, 15 minutes early is phenomenal because you're never late. And if you can boast that, uh, I don't know, it's little stuff like that. Like you're just running circles around civilian folks. And again, some civilian folks they're dialed in just like that, and they would have crushed it in the military, and they just chose not to, which is totally cool. But I'm not sure if it's a responsibility. I think it's more of like, hey man, no, this is what it is. It's some dudes get to the level that we were at, and that's done. That's where they choose to peak, and they'll just try to ride that accomplishment for the rest of their life. And then other dudes are like, being a Green Beret is a chapter in my book, and I want to continue to write great chapters. And those are the kinds of guys that I love hanging out with, because they just want to continue to do great things and continue to be the best in all that they do, whether that's starting a business or working a different job, or I don't know, being a professional skier, whatever the case is. They just want to continue to be the best, because that is the lifestyle that they've created, not just one portion of their life of military service, but rather it's just who I am, you know?
To be the best at anything, like
Right.
whatever they do, they'll just
Right.
be the best. Like the guy on the Facebook page, right? His name's Sean, and
Yeah.
he's down in Mexico making mezcal.
Right.
30 years in special operations. Now he's making mezcal, and I'm looking at it, it's like, this is pretty cool,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
you know. But just doing that, like killing it, making the shit, shipping it off, trading down in Mexico, living the life. Or I'm gonna go start a fishing charter, and
Yeah.
it's like killing it, right? Anything. These guys are doing anything, and they're gonna rise to the top. They rose to the top to be a Green Beret. They're gonna rise to the top in the civilian world. It's when we let shit derail us, like
Yeah.
drinking,
Yep.
not taking care of mental health, or all
Mm-hmm.
this other shit that we let or sacrificed, and now it comes back to haunt us. That
Right.
sacrifice will come back to haunt you. It's time to pay the piper,
Yeah.
because you sold your soul for however long you were in uniform or wearing the beret.
Yep.
Um, and now it's time to pay the price. And that's when guys get tripped up. And it's
Yeah.
really unfortunate. I know I did. And I'm trying to make up for it now. But I'm going to be the best at this. I'm going to be the best I can be. And put out a good show every time I can, and interview people that I find interesting. And hopefully they have a good experience. And that spreads out. And I can be the better example. I do think we have some responsibility, though. I think because I know there's people that look up to me that I don't even know,
Right.
and I have a responsibility to it. Live up to what they, because they want some good for me,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
don't even know them,
Yeah.
right? But I know there's people like that, because every once in a while you'll meet somebody that you didn't even know. They're like, "So thank you for inspiring me to do this." I'm like, oh fuck, I didn't know
Right.
that.
Right.
Um, and there's got to be somebody, and I don't know. I just feel like I don't want to let people down, and
Yeah.
that's the team life, right? You don't want to let anybody down.
Exactly.
Often to our detriment. We won't say no. We'll say yes every time,
Yep.
and just continue that on. So, but there's different perspectives of how to look at things,
Yeah.
and whatever keeps everybody else going and out of trouble, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Why do you think so many guys get sucked into that trouble?
Hmm.
I can tell you what. Here, I'll lead off first on this one, because
Yeah.
another guest on he said something, and I went, "Yeah, you're fucking right." Because the drinking specifically, right,
Mm-hmm.
is that's the last vestiges of the team room.
Yep.
The last time they were with the guys, and
Right.
they just don't want to let it go. And they just every time they get there, you get all emotional, and you start calling the guys on the phone.
Yeah.
But after a while, it gets out. It's not enough, and it gets out of control. And then the drinking. That's the last bit of the team room that's still alive up here, because
Yeah.
it's gone. The team's gone now. You're never going back to the team room. You can
Right.
visit or talk to people, but it's not the same. And he said that, and I went, yeah, that's probably some of it, right? It's
Yeah.
fucking crazy.
I think you're onto something there. And I would tend to agree with that. I mean, drinking is yeah, kind of part of the culture, at least to some degree. I think another reason guys either self medicate with that, or like anything, they're it's at the risk of sounding cliche, but it's like, what's my purpose now? I served for X number of years or this amount of time. This was my plan. That is now over. What good am I? What good do I have to offer? And if they aren't able to construct that new purpose or find that new purpose, I would say maybe sometimes they think like, well, maybe I'm not worth anything anymore. That I have peaked and there's nothing left for me to offer, which is incredibly sad to think about. And as a result, yeah, maybe they do try to escape with the booze or whatever else. And that bums me out because you mentioned it a second ago. It's like if you've gotten to that level of performance in human life, being a Green Beret or any kind of special operations or anything like that, there is nothing you can't do. And again, that sounds super cliche, but it's like, dude, you did stuff that nobody, not everybody can do. That skill set translates to anything, and it's not just like kicking indoors and being able to shoot. That's one particular skill set within this larger skill set, and that larger skill set is consistency and showing up and being able to perform even when it hurts and when it's hard and not quitting. Like that is a skill set that will just help you crush anything in life. And and I wish more dudes believed that. I talked to a number of guys that um, like even in special operations, I'm like, dude, what are you going to do when you get out? Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what I could offer. And in my head, it's like, dude, anything, like pursue anything and you're going to go crush it. Don't sell yourself short. Um, you, you did some
Well,
phenomenal
there
things.
is, you do get into a job zone and go, this is fucking stupid.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Though,
Yeah.
because you get there and guys, that's what right reason that,
Yeah.
they've either heard from other guys that have gotten out and it happens. You get into a job and you go, this sucks.
Yeah.
This really sucks. No one's like me.
Right.
Everybody thinks I'm the odd one out. And you go, I just don't want to be around these people. Then you withdraw,
Yeah. Yeah.
into yourself. And then that starts dying, or because you said earlier, the people you surround yourself, you show me your friends, I'll show you your future, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you your coworkers, you're around them 8, 9 hours a day, 10
E-
hours a day.
Exactly.
And if you're the highest performer, it's really tough to drag a bunch of people up to your level, but it's really easy for them to drag you down to their level.
That's a fact. Yeah. Exactly.
So I think that happens too. That's a bummer, But
Yeah.
so more research on the front side, but guys go right to the day they get out and then have no plan. Some guys have got this big plan because
Yeah.
they're like, I'm getting out. I'm going to do this and this and this. They can't stop.
Right.
Where for me, the Beret was the top of the mountain. I
Yeah.
had no plan. There was nothing after that. That was everything I wanted to do in life up to that point, and even up till now. I go, I'm content
Yeah.
not accomplishing anything else because that was it.
Right.
There was nothing else, and it's hard to drag yourself out of that hole because I
Right.
lost it. I got medically retired, and I'm out now,
Yeah.
and no check or anything's going to make up for the fact that I can't be there with the team ever
Yeah.
again.
Exactly.
So it's tough. It's a tough
Yeah.
thing to swallow. You said performance paranoia.
Yeah.
We got a little theory here on lesser known operators. It's called operator attitude. And I think that fits into it, that performance paranoia, that you're okay, I got to be as good as these people.
Yep.
But it coincides with the bro side of your brain, that toxic
Yeah.
operator attitude that
Yep.
in the team room of, breaking each other down. But, we need to build each other up because I ran into somebody else and they asked me a question and I said, yeah, I was a Green Beret. I'll answer your questions. But hey, why didn't you ask the dudes that are in uniform that are here?
Right.
And he's like, oh, they're scary. I'm like, oh, I can see that. Yeah, okay, I guess so.
Fair.
I didn't see it until he said that. I went, yeah, they do kind of have an attitude about them.
Yep.
But I know them. They're nice guys.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a different life. But you went to Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Right out after being an X-ray and get to your team. So now you're going to Oconus. You're doing all this wild shit now. You're not even staying in the States and going to a stateside group. What was your team's specialty when you get there?
uh, so I graduated the queue at a time where free fall for all. So everybody was getting Halo.
You
Which
son of a bitch.
I know.
This interview's over.
I know. Flipping tables. So I walk into my team room, and that's the first question they ask me. Did you go to Halo school? Roger Sarge. Do push-ups. And so, yeah, doing push-ups forever. I get it. But it was offered to me. I'm not going to turn it down. So what was my team's specialty? Our company had, free fall team. I don't think a dive team because it just was structured differently. And a mobility team. We were referred to as a ruck team. And
Mm.
I think that's just fancy for like, we just carry everything with us. Um, but, but ultimately it was like just some of the best dudes in the world. And we got to do such cool stuff. Like my very first trip with them, we were augmenting the Secret Service for Vice President Joe Biden at the time, who was doing a speech in Serbia. So my first trip was to Serbia, and wearing the tactical khaki pants and a black polo and my kit. I was like, dude, this is the coolest job in the world. I love being here, and it was awesome. It was great. And then my next trip was 6 or 8 weeks in Denmark, and we were just training their National Guard and rappelling out of little birds. And dude, it was just the best stuff. And so I'm just so grateful for landing on that first team, and having like decent leadership and just solid senior dudes to teach me the ways as I began to learn what it was like to be a team guy.
And you're in Germany on top of it.
Right, and Europe was cool, right? Yeah.
That's your home. You can just get on a train and go anywhere else. Did you guys? So this is you got the 16. So yeah, you're getting towards the end there. Did you do combat rotation at all or no?
Not out of Germany. We did Serbia, then Denmark, and then our next like big trip was 6 months to Estonia, which is essentially just a giant J set, and working there was tons of fun. Estonia was an awesome country. The guys that we worked with were phenomenal. But no combat rotation until I got back to Colorado, and then we did a combat rotation in 21, essentially closing down Afghanistan.
Mm. You joined chasing special forces is like this really hard goal to accomplish.
Yeah.
Have you have you know now you're on a team in your mind, have you accomplished that or are you still chasing it?
It was interesting. Um, my my buddy Travis and I, he was on my team. We we wound up uh, going and climbing Kilimanjaro together. And Kilimanjaro is not a technical climb. It's you're just walking. It just takes a couple days to get used to the climb or get used to the altitude. And I remember we were at base camp like at 6 p.m. We were going to bed down and then wake up at midnight to begin hiking so we could reach the summit at sunrise. And he and I were sipping coffee and just hanging out, and we hear this guy across base camp yelling, and kind of the medic in me kind of perked up and was like, "Hey, is everything okay?" Turns out the guy was just pumped. He had just summited that morning and had come back down, and so he was just like two fists over his head, just like stoked. I climbed Kilimanjaro. He was just yelling that over and over again. And Travis and I looked at each other, and he and I were both thinking the same thing, which was we were already trying to figure out what the next mountain was going to be for us. And we hadn't even finished this one yet. Uh, we had not summited, and we were already thinking, like, what's the next adventure? What's the next thing we're going to go chase after? The next challenge. And that's my long way around to answer your question, which is I was on a team and grateful for that, but I was seeking out that next level. Um, he convinced me after Estonia. He convinced me, hey, dude, you and I should go try out for CAG. And I was like, dude, I'm not ready for that. They're like on a different plane of existence. And he's like, nah, come on, let's do it. And so we did, and it didn't pan out. Like we both failed, but I think that's almost a healthy way to approach things. And I teach my clients this often. There, but you have to ride this really fine line. Be incredibly grateful for where you are currently and all the lessons you've learned to get here. But it is important to continue to seek out what that next adventure is going to be, that next challenge, because the goal is to just not stagnate. Even if you fail or don't quite measure up, keep chasing after those hard things. Try those hard schools. Go after those difficult scenarios to try to be better. And that is ultimately the goal. Is like, let's continue to be better every day. You know.
It can also be to your detriment too, because in group it's never enough. As you said, we
Right.
haven't even done this, and now we're going to go try it for Delta, which is
Right.
a whole nother fucking ball of wax in
Dude,
itself.
exactly.
Um, um, I never went, never didn't get the opportunity. That my time was over before I even came into that was going to be an option. But I think about it. But you know, would I've done well? Yes, I always do well.
Right.
But that's my the attitude, right? For any Green Beret, you
Right.
know, you think you can do it until you don't.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
so that's how I think about it. Would I have done well? Yes. Would I have gotten selected? I don't fucking know.
Right.
But I would have killed it the best of my abilities. But it's never enough. It's never enough. When did you start to get that feeling that like no matter how much I accomplish, I'm just going to want more of? You're already a Green Beret,
Right.
but you still want more. You want that next school. You want that next opportunity.
I don't think it's stopped. I still think that way. And again, I have to almost pull the reins back on myself sometimes to ensure that I am looking around and am being grateful for the present moment and where I currently am, to include all the struggles that got me to this point. Um, but I haven't figured out how to turn it off. I'm always seeking out, like, what's the next challenge that I could go try to tackle, in the next adventure to go conquer. You know, and you're right. I'm not entirely sure it's 100% healthy, but it's been fun. So
Yeah. Um, I've been able to moderate it in fitness now,
yeah,
um, because I saw more progress in doing less.
yeah,
And oh, I don't need to do seven workouts a workout. What if I just do 3 exercises and like 2 to 3 sets each? I'm out of the gym in 7 sets,
yeah,
and I'm getting stronger and fitter. And
yeah,
focus on my cardio and shit like that. That's another thing. Do you have clients where you got to go? You're doing too much.
yep,
We need to pull back here and reassess what we got going on, because the fitness podcast that I listen to, right? Everybody that signs up with them, I want to do 5 days a week. I want to jump into this and do
yeah,
everything. And they fail
right,
like immediately, because I can do 5 days a week, but I've been doing it my whole life.
yeah,
Like I could jump from where I'm at right now to 7 days a week and not have a problem.
right,
But you can't go from zero to 100 right away.
right.
How do you treat that situation?
It depends on who's asking me. Sometimes it's the young college age kid. It's like, dude, I just got to be in the gym constantly. And for them, it's like, it's almost like they're trying to cram for fitness, like shove as much fitness as possible in the next 90 days, and somehow that will produce results. And the first thing I tell them is like, dude, you're not sleeping enough. You need to recover. And the the bodybuilder that I quote is Mike Menser. He was big on rest recovery. I followed his program for a while, which was awesome, but very uncomfortable, where you work out to failure one day and then you rest for 4 days. Like when I was on a team, if you didn't work out every day, you're a piece of shit. And so this idea of like imposing 4 days of rest recovery was bananas to me. And it's still very difficult to do. But I sometimes encourage guys, dude, you're working out 7 days a week. You're you're running a ton of miles every week. You're also lifting, and you're only sleeping 6 hours a week. Dude, you're at diminished returns at this point. Like you're not gaining as much as you could if you just took a day or two off every now and then. And then other guys are maybe a little bit older, are kind of almost thinking the same thing. And I got to remind them, like, hey, man, you are not 21 anymore. Uh, Rest and recovery is where you make the gains. Like, ensure that that becomes a priority too, and not just 3 hours in the gym, however many days a week. The recovery process is vital for the ability to accrue strength.
Yeah. Doing too much, that gets you wisdom. That's experience, though. It takes a long time to get there, and that's where having a coach
Yep.
helps out to go,
Yep.
hey, no, I've been down this road. Let's pull back on the reins
Right.
here. You're gonna see phenomenal gains on 3 45-minute gym sessions a week.
Yep.
But how is that in the business world? Because you're coaching people not just in the gym, you're giving them, life advice
Right.
or relationship advice and shit like that. Like, where do you see that where people go for broke and hey, we need to pull it back here?
Yeah. I I often tell them that, like, the brain doesn't know what kind of stress is being given to you. Maybe it's a nasty email from your boss. Maybe it's you working out really hard in the gym. Maybe you are actually being chased by wild animals. Like, the brain just interprets it as stress. And so if you are in a constant state of flooding your system with cortisol, uh, wh- whether that's from like just working all the time, you are clouding your capability to think through problems better, because all you're doing is like responding to stress, and that's how your body and mind are reacting, right? And so for those kinds of things, it's kind of harder to navigate, because in the gym I can give like empirical data, like, hey, if you rest more, you'll get stronger. But when they're like, dude, I got bills to pay, I have like expectations from family to provide. Like, I get it, but you're probably not performing as well as you could if you took a day off, or turned your phone off at 5 p.m. and spent the evening with your family. Like, you are not putting that oxygen mask on first by working 24/7, right? And full disclosure, I got to remind myself of that too. Like, I typically, as soon as my eyeballs open, I'm thinking about work until I fall asleep at night. And so forcing myself to take those periods of like resting, recovering, doing things that activate different parts of my mind, spending time with people that I care about, like, that is all super important and makes me a better performer in the realm of work. And if my goal is to be really awesome at that, I need to take other parts of my life seriously in order to be able to be that kind of performer.
Yeah. You got you have to learn that on a team too, right? So you're
Right.
just taking the knowledge from the team. But why'd you leave regiment? Did you feel like your time was done, and or did what led to that?
You remember I told you the reason I joined the Army was because I wanted to pursue something where success was not guaranteed. Uh, as I approached my 10-year mark, I'll put it this way. Um, I think there's two kinds of guys that stay in for 20. Group A, they love the job and desperately want to pass on their knowledge and experience to the next generation of soldier. And they would just do that forever for free if they could. Group B stays in for 20 because it's the safe option. They have the benefits, they've got the retirement planned out, maybe GI Bill passed on to kids or spouse or something like that. It's the safe answer. I found myself creeping into group B, and like particularly around my 10-year mark, I was beginning to notice that I was starting to put a couple things on autopilot. And um I was at that point I was fairly senior in my position. I knew how to do my job and do it pretty well. I was confident in my capabilities. Uh, but I realized that if I were to stay in for a full 20, it would be because it's safe. It's got that safety net that the military and all its benefits provide, which runs counter to why I joined in the first place, right? I wanted to pursue something where I could give it my all and still come up short. And so that's when I kind of decided, like, I have to get out and do something different to chase after that pursuit of excellence, um, and disregarding the fear of potential failure. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my long story is why I got out at 10.
Did you get to prove yourself as a Green Beret though while you were in group? Because like for me, I always hang on to I didn't get to go to combat, and that was it. Like for me, getting to play chess, getting to go deploy with the team.
Yeah.
Did you get that moment of when you were wearing the beret that you got to say, "Yeah, I got what I came here for"?
No. So our my last trip on my team was to Afghanistan in 21, and we were at the point in the war where we were essentially closing things down. While we were there, we got word, hey, we're pulling out, start destroying documents, start destroying equipment, etc. And the climate for American casualties was precisely zero, and so they didn't even let us outside the wire. And when you, it was difficult because it was incredibly frustrating deployment. As a medic, I'm 100% grateful because none of my guys got hurt. Uh, One guy tore a pec because he was benching too heavy, but none of my guys actually got hurt, and I'm so grateful for that. And I would never trade, my ego, uh, it for them being hurt so I could perform something. That would be stupid. Um, but when we left Afghanistan and got home, wife and kids went on vacation, and so I'm alone in my house drinking too much, and I got to this point where I was like, dude, what did I just spend the last decade of my life doing? Because I had this image in my head of like, I'm a Green Beret, I'm probably going to go do a specific job, and I'm not necessarily bloodthirsty, but I do want to see if I have what it takes to step up and be that guy, you know. Never had the opportunity, and so now I'm like struggling with this. Like, dude, did I just waste a decade of my life? What is my purpose now? It's evaporated. At that point, I've already decided I'm going to get out. Um, and it's like, dude, what am I doing? And it got so dark that I like pulled my sidearm off my top shelf in my office and put it in my mouth. I was like, dude, this sucks. And I'm pleased that I didn't make that decision, um, because I now have the opportunity to recreate or restructure what I think my purpose is. But but that's something that still haunts me to today. It's and I am often almost ashamed to talk about my lack of combat experience because I never fired my weapon in combat ever. And as a Green Beret, that's like, bro, that's what you signed up for almost. That's like, go be the war hero. That's what it's like what we trained forever to do. And I just never had the opportunity. And yeah, it definitely still haunts me. But I've gotten better at making peace with it. Um, and that's all you really can do. And now it's like it's one foot in front of the other, pursuing the next thing, whatever that may be.
Well, I'm glad you didn't make that decision.
Thank you.
Let's see, almost 2 years ago, my very good friend of mine, one of my best mates, did, and it has haunted my life up until it still does every day.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you didn't pass that suffering on to other people.
Yeah.
As for the combat, though, I can totally and 100% relate to you, and hopefully I can make you feel a little better, like other people have made me feel better. I raised my right hand twice. I did everything my country asked me to do, without question. Every time I influenced my career and moved it the directions I wanted it to go, and things didn't go the way I wanted them to go in the end. But I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about my combat experience or non-combat experience. Only what I think about it, right?
Right.
So uh, I'll never get over it.
Right.
I'll never be okay with it. That didn't happen. The years I was in, and I didn't get to do that. But I don't give a shit what anybody else thinks, and I'm very upfront with my experience, uh, or lack thereof, or whatever. But I still did it. I have the beret. I had good standing in regiment. I have people that say good things about me. Wasn't always the best friend or best person. I'm working on that, but yeah, don't demean or look bad on your service or your record because you didn't get to do something. Um, I've had other guests on here, 20 years didn't get to do it really.
Yeah.
Not the door kicking mission. Their career went the intelligence route, and they just completely different mission set and things like that. So there are, just like there's a million ways to die in the West, there are 2 million ways to be a Green Beret,
Yeah.
and look good on the regiment. And look at the things you've done afterwards, right? To be a fine example, a leader of, and say, and to be public with it. I'm a Green Beret, and I can help people. Now, not for anybody listening at home, do not look up to people just because of their title,
Right.
or what they use, the flashy things you see on social media and things like that. Look up to the person or what they are, because the beret is there's a lot of things that come along with it. We're not de facto role models. I don't know if you
Right.
agree with that.
No, I everybody in the military, to include special operations, it's just made up of individuals, right? All kinds of people get in, and all kinds of people perform. There's certain common traits and overlapping values that get you to that level, but there's all kinds of different people, and so you're 100% right. Don't admire the title for the title's sake. Seek out the individual and what they are actually like. That's kind of how I try to view people. I don't categorize people based on particular service or whatever. It's like, tell me who you are and let's get to know each other.
Yeah, yeah, that's the way to do it, right? Because just assume by what you see, because a lot of social media and stuff, that shit's fake.
Right.
Just
Exactly.
to get people clicks and likes and things
Yeah.
like that. But then you sit down and you have a long conversation with somebody and you really get into, hey, why is this? What do you think about this? And then things like that. It's unfortunate our attention span has gotten away from long conversations and investigating into things, and we jump to conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting, that I like that you get young people reaching out to you. Hey, guide me in this way, because that's great. Because I don't know, for lack of role models or the things you're seeing on TV, to have somebody to reach out to. And one thing I discovered, like starting this, there's so many people from our community doing, fitness mentorship or life coaching. Why do you think there's such a market for it now? Because, or is it just more visible now? Because before social media and everything, nobody had heard of this shit.
Right.
But there's just also no advertising for it. It was all probably word of mouth,
Right.
and things like that. But now, and I go back to 2 Weeks in Hell was released. All right,
Mm-hmm.
we need to train for this episode that we saw on television.
Right. Yeah.
And there's no rewatching it. It just was on, and you could only watch it then. And you had, like, I don't know how people watched it. When YouTube finally came out, you could
Yeah.
watch it on there. But now, the next generation after that, guys are getting out and starting their own fitness mentorships, or like you've got going on. Why is there such a call for it?
I think it's I think you're onto something. I think it's more visible now. Like with the boom of social media, you can get your name and word out pretty easily. Like the barrier to entry is like zero. But I think in addition to that, it's a period where people are well aware now that they can take charge of their destiny. And if they want to go be a Green Beret, dude, what are going to increase my chances of earning that title? Well, I should probably get a fitness coach. I should probably get somebody that's been there and knows exactly what it takes to be there. And yeah, that will increase my likelihood. Or maybe it's business. It's like, dude, I want to start a business. I should probably talk to somebody that's done it before so I can learn from their mistakes and avoid them as best I can. And that like leapfrogs me into a different level already. So I think it's both those. I think it's social media, like gets the word out real fast. And I think it's people that want to like grab life by the horns and steer it and bend it to their will, which is awesome. Uh, and in order to do that, it's you don't you don't have to like muscle through it by yourself, and learn from other people's mistakes, which is often people that are, telling stories or having conversations like that. Uh, listen to those conversations and glean what you can from it, because that helps you avoid mistakes down the road, which increases likelihood of success.
What I like more about what you're doing, right, is because I think, and maybe that's just the way I went about things and went through the course and got to the end, my end state, is the mental side of it.
Yeah.
Physical. If you just told somebody go ruck your ass off with
Yeah.
45 pounds in all your free time, they're probably going to have a pretty okay time at
Right.
selection physically, right?
Right.
If they're
Right.
just, that's all you're doing. You're not doing anything else other than your daily, and you just ruck all the time,
Mhm.
everywhere, carrying heavy weight. But man, if you're not switched on mentally,
Yep.
you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
You're not going to get through it. I think it's way more important. You can be as physically fit as you want, but some of that comes with toughness. If you're not in pain from being, physically run down, you're going to be able to perform mentally.
Right.
But what do you think the split is there, mental towards physical, in accomplishing all this crazy shit that we disregard? We disregard all this shit,
Yeah.
as, oh, I did that.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the split is. I think mental is way heavier though, because you can train anybody to be strong and fast. I mean, like you said, if you just get somebody to ruck a lot, they'll be better at rucking. Selection specifically isn't really an assessment of physical capability. Yes, there's a lot of physical components to it, but I think truly the assessment is the breaking down of one's body over the course of several weeks to see how well you can perform at that state and how well you can still interact with your teammates after you're tired, hungry, and hurting. I think that's the actual assessment. If you can, this sounds so cliche and silly, but if you can maintain a decent attitude while you're hurting and everything's miserable, dude, that's the kind of guy you want on the team. Because like when it's like miserable and you're in the middle of a horrible situation, you want the guy that's like able to stay positive and still do the job. You know what I mean?
What pisses me off so much is guys, when I talk to them from, group or whatever, they go, man, you were so fucking funny. And I
Yeah.
go, but I'm having a real tough time making funny reels. And like when I talk to people, I'm not funny and I can't tell stories and I can't be
Right.
funny. And everybody I run into, they're like, man, you really lighten the mood. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I just told how it was. Like I was always complaining, but everybody thought I was just being funny. And I'm like, no, this fucking blows all the time. And
Yeah.
everybody's like, you were so fun. And like, even my buddy, Tom Bridgham, uh, we get to Sage. He gives me a pink slip. He gave me a bad review. He was
Yeah.
the E7 on the team, and he thought I was just not taking it seriously. And I was like, okay, I disagree, but we'll see what you think at the end. And at the end, he gave me a blue. He came up to me and he said, "Man, I'm glad you were really lightening the mood during Sage, or this would have fucking sucked." It's like, I was like, every team, that's what teams need,
Yeah.
somebody to lighten the things. But now I go, oh, man, because the content, right? I'm like looking at shit. I'm like, I gotta be funny, but I'm
Right.
not fucking funny.
Right. I,
Nobody wants to hear me complain.
I, and that's an important thing to bring up. The sense of humor on teams is often pretty unique. The other places I've witnessed it are in the surgical ward. Like surgeons have a pretty dark sense of humor as well, and probably like cops and EMTs. But like we have the capability to laugh about just horrendous situations. Um, I'm reluctant to say this, but I will. So my mom died when I was very little. I was 6 years old. She passed away of cancer, and that's something I had to navigate through most of life, and even now I'm still navigating through that. But my one of my best friends, Paul, that is like an okay joke to crack now. Like we were at his house as like last year, and he was having a cookout, and his his dad was there with his new stepmom, and uh, and they were interacting, and I said, I had a mom once too, and Paul, Paul immediately was like, "Well, now I've got two, so it sucks to be you, man." So it's like, I mean, poor example, but like that's like the level of like being able to crack jokes about just horrendous situations. That is what kind of gets you through the junk. And if you're in a situation where you're trying to make content that reflects that level of sense of humor, like most people aren't going to get it, and you're going to have to go talk to HR. You know what I mean?
Oh no, not gonna get it at all because for better or for worse, when you said that, you're like, my mom died at 6 of cancer. I'm like, oh my god, is he putting me on the spot to make a dead mom cancer joke? We just met. Oh my god. Oh, I'm gonna have to edit this whole segment out. Fuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's it. You're right. Am I confined to being funny inside that locked team room? That's
I, I, I think I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I know that there are jokes that are allowed in that kind of setting that are not allowed anywhere else.
no.
And so and for whatever reason, most of us have that kind of sense of humor anyway. You know.
Well, yeah, it comes with the earning the right to being back there, and people can handle it. Like you said, you got to approach your clients' different personalities differently
Right.
when trying to get them to realize the gravity of the situation or what they want to accomplish and the steps to actually get there. But you said, physically we can train anybody to do these physical things. Really, you can, right?
Yeah.
Because there's people that would go through and they're non-selects and they're
Right.
studs. They're just physically get through all the shit, but they're just not, then those cadre can see through that you won't be a good fit in the group.
Right.
And that's true in civilian life, business, or anything. All the physical stuff, you can learn how to do that. You need to train your mind. And everybody discounts that because you can't see it.
Right.
There's no video like of lifting and stuff. You can't put out a content video of somebody being mentally strong,
Right.
right?
Right.
You know, people are get better at it, like posting the video of consistency. Oh, I wake up at 4:45
Mm-hmm.
every day. Well, then people think you're a douchebag after you start
Right.
posting stuff like that. You're like, well, not all of us can do that.
Exactly.
So it's tough. It's tough to even get support for something like that. What Well, I think we beat that one to death,
Yeah.
actually. I don't even need to make up
the,
another one
the
about that one.
the only other thing I would add to that is I think mental resiliency is a skill that can be learned and trained, but you have to figure out ways to train it. And so I think the SEALs have a term, stress inoculation, intentionally doing things that are difficult, uncomfortable consistently, whether that's cold plunge or super hot sauna or heavy lifting, rucks, like all of that is forcing yourself to push beyond what you like want to do and is beyond comfortable. The more you do that, I think it does kind of train that resiliency muscle, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, the hard shit.
Yeah.
If you just continually do hard shit, everything will be easier. And you said, stressful situations.
Yeah.
Um, Stuff will happen on the road or whatever. I just drive around it. Like, nope,
Exactly.
let's not get excited here. You don't get excited. You don't get overly, but that's tough. That's a tough skill to learn, is to
Yeah.
stay cool when shit's falling down around you.
When my oldest daughter was learning to drive, I was pumped. I was like, yes, this is going to be so awesome. I'm so proud of her. And I would be the one that would take her out. We would, drive to the coffee shop, get our, Starbucks fancy milkshake thing, and then drive around. It was our opportunity to actually just connect. And it was like my favorite time because she was focused on the road, but it allowed her to open up and talk about life and stuff. Her mom was not stoked about the idea of her driving. And And it took me a while to kind of figure out like why are our responses so different between this like same event. And then I was like, oh yeah, part of my job used to be like blowing stuff up and jumping out of airplanes at high altitude. My daughter driving is like nothing compared to that. Versus somebody that's never really been exposed to those kinds of stressful situations of like, of course, this is going to be a more stressful, uh, respectively, like relatively speaking, in like her perspective. And so I had to kind of explain that to my daughter because my daughter was getting a little pissed off. Like, dude, mom's not letting me go drive. Mom's, wants me to take additional driving courses outside of like what school is offering. I'm like, well, this is probably why she hasn't. Her stress threshold is much smaller than mine. Um, to me, you driving is awesome, and I'm pumped for you because I've been exposed to a lot of other bullshit.
Yeah, though that level of uh, calm is paid for many times over. That you're not going to be able to teach people that
Exactly.
unless they go get some similar scenario situation, and then they're not going to be talking to you because they're going to have figured it out.
Right. Yeah.
I did want to circle back
Yeah.
to again about the Halo. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
For everybody listening at home, Halo school's like the most sought after free fall school, skydiving.
Yeah.
You go up to altitude, you jump out, you go back to the earth, you have a great time. You're wearing board shorts on a beach all the time. You got slick back hair, you're tan. You're the cool guys, right?
Yeah.
When I went through, it was just being introduced, and the top third or quarter of the class, right?
Yeah.
Got to go. And they took everybody, and then it was going to be divided up into 3 classes. What they failed to plan for was the 3rd class, and my last name starts with a W. So instead of, okay, we'll just weed it down into the top 8th of the class or 16th or whatever, those people, and then they'll go to those 2 classes. They just canceled the 3rd class.
Oh no. That's
alphabetically.
Horrible. That's
so
horrible.
And that was like another disappointment that was insignificant at the time. I went, fuck, I'm going to get to do all these cool schools when I get to group.
Right.
And then I get to group and it's over. The coolest school I got to go to was like hazmat or some shit like that.
Right.
Or no, I got to go to the driver's course so that I could, well, that's kind of fraudulent. So that I hope Elon Musk isn't listening, so that I could help everyone get their driver's licenses when we went to Korea, so I could put the stuff in the box.
Right.
That was the only school I got to go to.
Yeah.
I got dropped or bumped for somebody that was on a team every time after that, after I got hurt. So all those things added up. So the thing I impress on people, other than do it, just go do it, is enjoy the things while you're doing them.
Right.
And try and do the best while you're doing it, because you don't know when that's going to be it, when it's shut off.
Yep.
And I didn't know that was it. I thought I was going to have a long career on the teams and in group and things like that. And then it was over. And I didn't get to go back on to do it. And do you try and impress on your clients that like the time is now?
Right.
Like it is now, because you may not realize it, but your time's running out. It's clicking, right? And you're only going to be, for lack of a better term, operational for so many years.
Right. Yeah.
What do you sit them down and say to them? How do you get that into them? Is it just a procedure that you've built into the coaching them that you impress upon over a long portion of time? Or do you directly say to them, listen, this one is how it is?
I often say time is our most precious commodity, and one should capitalize on time as much as possible. And I keep referring to my buddy Paul, but he's a super smart guy. He and I were on a trip together, and he says, I live by 2 rules: be kind to everybody and say yes to every opportunity. And it's actually not a bad philosophy, because particularly the opportunities that present themselves that you're a little afraid of, just say yes, because you'll either come out the other end having learned something really awesome, or failed and still learned something really awesome. So opportunities, those are missed opportunities, are what I'm trying to avoid down the road, and I'm trying to help my clients avoid. So when they are sitting in that rocking chair at the end of life, they're not looking back at those moments where, like, man, I wish I would have said yes to that opportunity. And so that is a recurring theme in kind of all of my coaching, either one-on-one or in my group coaching calls.
It's later than you think, right?
Right. Exactly.
I had this podcast I listened to when we were on vacation once. It was shitty, and then it turned out to be interesting. But the thing I pulled from it, you pull something from everything you hear, right? And they were talking about sundials and how there's always a Latin saying around sundials.
Yeah.
And the one that stuck with me from that show is it's later than you think.
Right.
And I think about that all the time.
Accurate.
Because that's how it was when I was group. It was, my time was running out. And when I got to the team, it was running out. And some guys, the time for their life is running out. They don't know it. You got to live it to how you want to enjoy it in the moment, because you don't know when it's going to be over. Do you miss group at all?
Oh yeah.
When you're sitting thinking about it
all the time. And I miss the guys. That team life is something else, man. And it's hard to replicate anywhere. Even some of my closest friends that have never served, it is a little bit different relationship. Man, team life is just, it's so much fun, because it's like I mentioned earlier, it's like guys at the pinnacle of human performance all around you, and you get to be a part of that. And then also bust their balls when they're not measuring up, which is just a whole different layer to like that camaraderie. Yeah, dude, I miss it all the time, man. And I knew when I separated from the Army that was going to be the most difficult part of separation and transitioning out, was walking away from that kind of community. And although I'm kind of building my own community through like my clients and on the school platform, it's not the same. Like it's just hard to replicate anywhere else, you know?
No. And then to impress on people, because you're mentoring these people that when they get into that zone of something they really enjoy doing, it's going to go by so fast.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to go by that, because I started doing this not that long ago, and every day goes by fucking immediately. Like I wake up, gym, I'm working on the podcast, we go to the gym, I come back, I'm working on this, doing an interview, making posts and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden it's bedtime.
Yep.
It goes by so fast, and I'm like, oh, all I got to show for that's a few posts. I got an episode, and I got to edit it and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how I know I'm enjoying what I'm doing. But yeah, people have to realize that once you get into the zone of something, you have to stop and look around and appreciate what you've got going on.
Yep.
Because you're gonna be doing it, and then it's gonna be over. Like, yep. We were in uniform. The 8 years I was in the military were maybe 15 minutes long.
Exactly.
When I think about it. And then just get in the civilian world, and it seems like, stuff goes at a nice leisurely pace. But now I'm doing something I like, and time's going by too fast.
Right, exactly.
Did you you're in my age of Green Berets. Did you take your phone out of your pocket and take pictures once in a while? Because I didn't. I don't have any pictures of anything.
I did, but not enough. I am grateful for the minimal documentation that I did do, like training events. Even when we were in Afghanistan, going to the range and stuff, I try to get pictures of everybody. Because you're right, man. It's like at some point, I'm not going to be around that anymore. And admittedly, sometimes it's fun to bust out the dad lore and show like my youngest daughter cool things that dad used to do. And she's like, wait, what? You used to jump out of airplanes? You used to rappel out of helicopter? You blew that thing up? Holy smoke. I love doing that. And I sprinkle that in every now and then just to let her know I'm not as big a nerd as she thinks I am.
I used to be cool. I still am, but I used to be also.
Right.
Yeah. That is one thing. And if you're listening at home and you're in the service or whatever, and you listen this far, when appropriate, take your phone out of your pocket and take some pictures with the boys or the gal or whatever you're doing, the team and everything. I wish I had some more photos. I know there's some floating around out there. I've got a disc, an actual CD-ROM disc that I can't figure out how to get the information off of. Looking around the house for a computer for a CD reader, but we're working on that. Man, I got 5 questions I ask everybody if you're ready.
Send it.
All right. What is your response to thank you for your service?
It used to be like all bashful, like, what do I do with my hands? And now it's typically thank you for your support. And I typically leave it at that.
Yeah. You got to have one queued up.
Yeah.
Like, ready to go.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's how you first get out and everyone goes, I don't know. Right. I don't know what to say here. I don't know what I'm doing. You get more embarrassed by it. It was an honor. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I go with. Pretty simple. What's the one characteristic that sets operators apart from the conventional forces?
I think it's the ability to continue on despite miserable situations. It's like, I don't know how to quit. I don't know how to stop. I'm just going to keep going. I think that's one of the best ones for sure. And that can be applied to more than just the physical. It's like the mental and emotional when you're on the struggle bus and just dealing with the shit. I'm just going to keep going because I don't know how to quit, you know.
You just find a way to get it done.
Yeah.
Guys that are going to get it done, they just get it done.
Exactly.
What is the one moment of your career that you wish you could go back and relive or redo?
I don't know. All the stuff that happened. I think I can think of moments where I didn't put out as hard as I should have. Like CAG selection, that haunts me to this day. I wish it. All right, to give you one specific one, my buddy said, "Hey, you and I should go try out for CAG," and I said, "Okay." And I should have researched a little bit and gone for Orange instead. Orange is like the mix between SF and CIA. To be honest, I think that would have been a little bit more up my alley, and I probably would have done a little bit better at that selection. Not saying I would have gotten selected, but I think I would have done a little bit better, and I think that would have been a better approach if I were to advance my career.
We always dwell on the failures, right?
Indeed.
We did so many cool things. So many accomplishments and cool things throughout the career. And even just getting to the point of just putting the beret on. And then it's those little things that we fucked up that haunt us.
Yep.
Yeah, I know what you mean. What's the best piece of advice that you received during your career?
It was that selection. It was after like a team week event. And we're all busted up and tired and hungry and just wrecked. And Kadri sat us all down and he says, "Listen up, men. Everyone's going to have a bad day. The trick is to have more good days than bad." And that's what kind of flipped the switch of like, this is a long journey. And as long as I can accumulate more good performances, good days, if I can accumulate more of those than bad ones, I think I'll be okay. And now I've translated that into life too. Is not every day is going to be perfect, and not every day I'm going to measure up to the standard that I want. But if I can accumulate more good days, then I think I'm on the right track.
That's true, man. You are going to have some bad days anywhere. Yeah. Civilian life or business side, it doesn't matter. You're going to have some bad days and just fucking make the most of the good ones.
Exactly.
All right, last one. What were you afraid of then, and what are you afraid of now?
It's this question, and I think it haunts a lot of people, and it is, do I have what it takes? And the only way to find that out is to go do it and be okay with the results regardless. That question ran through my brain all the time during the queue, during selection, during me swearing into the Army. I was 27, and a lot of my friends were like, dude, what are you doing? Don't join the Army. But that question, do I have what it takes, has guided me a lot. And even now, trying to run my own business, it's do I have what it takes? And it's a haunting question, but it's a lot of fun to chase after too.
Well, you got to be doing something right, man. You got like 80,000 followers or something like that.
Yeah,
People like your shit that you're putting out. So you got to be doing something right.
I
All
appreciate it.
right. For the folks that have listened this far, the book is called Beyond
Yeah.
the Battlefield by Chris Lee. How can everybody find you on the socials if they're looking for you?
Yeah, on social media, on TikTok and on Instagram, it's coach_Chris.Lee. So Coach Chris Lee.
All right. I will have links to Chris in the show description and everything. Man, you got anything for me?
Dude, I'm just grateful for this opportunity. Thanks so much for reaching out. I definitely want to do this again if you're up for it. So thank you.
Fuck yeah, man. I, I the exact same thing you said to you because you've got it way farther ahead of me and figured out, and I'm just trying to find my way in this thing. So I appreciate you taking the time because you're a busy guy and helping me out a little bit, but that's what I want this to be. So I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, man.
My
Bye,
pleasure.
everybody.